Big 12 Today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 a Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Tuesday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westlake. I'm Ari Tepkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here at your home for the Big 12. Tune in the Big 12 studios. Took Memorial Day off. Back at it today. A lot to get to, including what happened over the weekend in softball and baseball, plus the spring meetings percolating for the SEC in Destin, Florida. Spring meetings begin tomorrow for the Big 12. We'll be out there at the beautiful PGA Frisco facility, the Omni at the PGA Frisco. So it should be a lot of fun to be out there and have a sense of what the Big 12 is talking about, especially as it pertains to what Greg Sankey and the SEC are talking about, James.
Yeah, it's going to be a big couple of days. Super excited to see the new compound. I've heard a lot about the PGA area up there. I know that, the Big 12 has a studio that they've used for a couple of their shows, like Inside the 12, that our buddies at Raycom produce for the league, and it just looks really good. So excited to see everybody converge on that part of town, and a lot to discuss.
Yes, a lot to react to, a lot to discuss. Feels like it's not very much, but certainly a lot to get into. We'll dive into all of that on today's show. Plus, Kat Osterman joins us coming up in about 30 minutes. We're going to talk about what she saw in the Super Regionals this weekend. Did you have a good Memorial Day? Did you do anything fun?
Yeah, we did. We had a house full of children and did the pool and did bike rides and did all the family fun activities. So pretty worn out today, which I think Memorial Day is like the busiest barbecue pool day, I would argue. 4th of July would be in the conversation, but I feel like for our neighborhood, we have a community pool that opens Memorial Day weekend, I should say.
So always a huge weekend for that.
Like 1 billion people, wall to wall, just full of people.
No room even in the pool.
No. In fact, yesterday it was actually really nice out. I didn't even get in the water. I just chilled, took in all the scenery. So, we had a nice weekend. You had some family in town, yeah?
Yeah. It was funny how you said that. You had some family in town, yeah?
I remember that, like confirming. I wasn't 100% sure. I'd put it at 85 to 90%. I couldn't remember if you were going there or if they were coming to you or if that was this weekend or another weekend coming up.
Yeah, not exactly. My sister came in town because my niece had a softball tournament.
That's what it was.
But the unfortunate or fortunate part, depending on how you look at it, it was canceled because of rain that we had. So we're able to have some fun on Saturday with the cousins and with everybody, so that was good. And then grilled some steak last night. Let me ask you something. How do you eat your steak?
Medium.
Medium.
Yeah, I go medium.
Okay. I was afraid of that. I mean, I'm not judgmental about most things, but this one certainly is.
No, not at all.
Yeah. No, not. So you like?
So you like it medium rare?
Yeah, I mean, there's no other.
I'm assuming it's too cooked.
Yeah. What are you afraid of?
Dying.
Got it. And the medium versus medium rare steak that's the difference.
Deathly ill.
Yeah.
Well, I think at a restaurant I say medium because it just feels like the safest bet.
Safe being what?
Safe being the least margin for error.
Huh.
At home, I would say they're probably a little bit more medium, on the rarish side. But when I go to a restaurant, that just feels like right down the middle.
You think it tastes as good?
I think the home steaks taste way better.
Right. Like when it's medium rare, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
Why not just rip the Band-Aid off? Just go medium rare at the restaurant. What if you get it rare? Then it might actually still be good.
Okay, so on your rare to goodness ratio scale,
yes,
rare is 10, medium rare is like a 7, medium's like a 5. The rarer the better is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I like medium rare. I like to have the crisp, crust on the outside with the ooey gooey pink middle. I mean, to me, it's just a waste of a steak without it. But I mean, you're not alone, I guess. I think some people are afraid, perhaps. Afraid of what? I don't know. Afraid of good flavor, good taste.
Yeah, I guess when I'm chewing my meal, ooey gooey is not the texture that I'm shooting for when it comes to meat.
How about buttery soft?
Ooh, buttery soft. Now you had me there.
Yeah, see, that's really
I have no rebuttal for buttery soft.
That's what you're looking at there with
You
medium
get-
rare.
And butter's the key.
Butter's
the key to a good steak.
Yeah. So I've got one of those, it's like a Big Green Egg knockoff. It's a Kamado Joe, kind of like a Kamado oven. And so you get that thing rolling to 550 degrees, 600 degrees. You can sear that bad boy for about 3 minutes on each side. Whew. It's perfect.
You're cooking a
Better.
steak in 6 minutes.
Yeah. 6 minutes.
That's amazing.
At about 550 degrees, you sear that thing in a cast iron skillet on the grill. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole process too. You build that grill up to get it to 550 for about an hour, but it's worth it, man. It is worth it.
They can't
come
do
to my
that
house,
at Chili's.
You come to my house, you're not getting served medium. It's not getting medium. It's the reason I'm not inviting you.
Well, I'd like to see. I have a feeling that your steak, medium rare, would probably be perfect. Because, again, at the restaurant, if you go medium, sometimes you get medium rare, and sometimes you get way too well done.
Oof.
But at home, when you have more control,
Yeah.
I like where your head's at. You had me at seared. You had me at buttery soft. Nothing sounds better.
So give Kansas some nice medium rare seared steaks. Kansas wins the Big 12 tournament championship this weekend in baseball. They beat the number 2 seed West Virginia pretty handedly, avenging their 3-game sweep at the hands of West Virginia at home to end the regular season, or at the close of the regular season, I should say. But what's interesting is it didn't really reflect, I guess, in the actual NCAA tournament bracket, which was revealed yesterday, James. So the Big 12 gets 6 teams in the field. I beg your pardon, 6 teams in the field. TCU is the bubble team that did not get in. But Kansas is the highest seeded team at 15, which means that they're one of the lower seeded 1 seeds. West Virginia got the second highest seed for the Big 12 at 16. What'd you make of how this thing shook out for the Big 12 with the 6 teams in the 16-team field, including 15-seeded Kansas and 16-seeded West Virginia?
Yeah, especially when you factor in how both teams finished the year. Like, Kansas did something they had not done in 77 years. They were the first team since 2009 when Texas did it to win the regular season and the conference tournament. I thought that would carry more weight. And then West Virginia had won, 12 out of 13, I think, going into the Big 12 championship. And then that only lost to Kansas. So you could make a case that they were underseeded. TCU being left out of the field entirely, a preseason top 10 team and the preseason team to win this league, even though their season was just decimated by injuries. And then the way Kansas won, it's kind of like the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee when it comes to March Madness. A lot of times you get to that championship Sunday, and they have, this is what the bracket looks like if this team wins, this is what the bracket looks like if this team loses or this other team wins. And I'm not so sure that was the case with baseball, with how Kansas boat raced West Virginia in that championship. To win by 9 runs and basically not have that move the needle was a little bit surprising.
Yeah, here's what Dan Fitzgerald, the KU baseball coach, said following the bracket reveal.
What an awesome day, and I knew that we'd have some guys that would ask questions today. The media always wants me to reflect, and I do a really poor job of reflecting. So this morning I got up and thought I need to spend some time reflecting, and I thought back to 4 years ago and thought what we've done over a 4-year period of time, how amazing it is. And it's literally taken everyone in this room and countless others that have really marched this along every day. We've just literally stacked a brick each day and moved this thing along. So, when I started thinking, I spending a bunch of time this morning trying to map this out and figure out who we're going to play, and I finally just shut my book and thought, I'm just going to enjoy this. And that's the one thing that I've challenged our guys on since August, that nobody is going to enjoy it more than us. And I think we've stuck to that. In fact, I think our dugout enjoys it too much at times. But it's been an incredible ride, and I'm so thankful for everyone in this room that supported us. And hey, here's the great part. We've made some incredible modifications to the ballpark out there, which means we can pack this thing at an epic level, and we know that our students will show up. It's the greatest student section in the history of college baseball. and we've got a bunch of them back there, and I know you guys will have them ready to go. So thank you to everyone. Can't wait to get rolling. Hey, we're just getting started and can't wait to see you on Friday.
Yeah, so Kansas, as the 15 seed, has 2-seeded Arkansas in their region. Many figured that Arkansas would be in line to host. Kansas goes 42-16. They sweep the Big 12 regular season and tournament title. Only the fourth team since 2001 to pull that double. They get slotted 15th nationally, while Mississippi State went 4-6 in SEC series, lost its last 3 weekends, dropped a head-to-head with Arkansas, lands at the 14 seed. So that one's a bit bizarre to me, but it does benefit Cincinnati, who's the 2 seed in that region, so maybe they have a chance to come out of the Starkville Regional. And then aside from that, West Virginia, as the 16 seed, they're hosting as a 16 seed in Morgantown. Oklahoma State is a 2 seed in the Tuscaloosa Regional. Cincinnati is the 2 seed in that Starkville Regional, as I mentioned. James, Arizona State gets the 3 seed in the Lincoln, Nebraska Regional. UCF is the 2 seed in its Auburn, Alabama Regional, and then Oklahoma, and then UCF is the 6 seed, I beg your pardon, the 2 seed in the Auburn Regional.
You know, and with KU having Arkansas, a really dangerous 2 seed that has been there, they know how to win in the postseason. They're a blue blood, if you will, type program. Just to have that name pedigree in KU's region, if the Hawks come out of there, it'll be tremendous, not just for Kansas, but for the Big 12. Like, it feels like this has been, and it's not fair to say a Cinderella storybook type season for Kansas, because they've done it back-to-back years. First time they've been in the postseason back-to-back years since 93 and 94. So at some point, they're no longer just a program on the rise. They have risen when it comes to Kansas baseball. But to have a name like Arkansas in your region, I use the blue blood analogy because it's like having a down Kentucky team. Like when Iowa State played Kentucky in the men's basketball tournament in March Madness, even though Iowa State was clearly the better team, just having that brand and that pedigree, it moved the needle for the league to get that win. I see a lot of the parallels with Kansas and Arkansas in baseball.
Here's what Arizona State coach Willie Bloomquist said about his draw.
You hear things, and obviously you can't get away from it and not see it. I mean, everyone's shoving it down your throat and trying to predict where you're going, and as you can see, it doesn't matter. The last place that we probably thought we would be going would be Nebraska, based on all the quote-unquote expert predictions. But at the end of the day, man, we're stoked to go there. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. They got a great atmosphere and obviously a great team. So we're going to have a big challenge in front of us, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is when you get the 15 and 16 seed, it means you got to win your region, and then you get either the 1 or the 2 overall seed in the super regions, and that's where West Virginia and Kansas are. So not only do they get sort of the back end of the region hosts, but Kansas, with a win in their regional, which will be really tough, would then travel to Atlanta to take on 2-seeded Georgia Tech, whereas West Virginia would have to travel to UCLA to take on Rock Chalowski, the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the upcoming MLB draft, and the UCLA Bruins, if they're able to get out of the region. So tough draw for the Big 12, but look, in the NCAA tournament, there's only good teams left, so it's the way it goes, and the Big 12, 6 teams represented, so we'll see how many of these teams can advance past the first weekend and maybe even get on to Omaha.
Well, and I'm really intrigued by Oklahoma State and their region. They've got Alabama, and then Alabama State and USC upside, upstate, not the USC Trojans. They have tremendous upside. USC upstate. But Oklahoma State, like you think about their season, TCU dealt with injury issues, kind of that bookended their season, the beginning and the end. Oklahoma State, it was more steady to the point where they're getting healthier and they're playing better. So Oklahoma State is another one of those programs to kind of keep an eye on. And I love the way that they've set up some of these regions, like Alabama and Alabama State. I know that's not really a rivalry, but you've got 2 teams from the same state. Florida and Miami over on the other side of the bracket. Like, there's some really intriguing just matchups and pods, if you will.
Sure, geographically relevant ones, yep.
And I like how they did that. But what, like TCU, TCU's missed the tournament now, 2 of the last 3 years? And they weren't even really snubbed. Like, they just had such a slide this year. Their RPI was only 46. They were only 6-12 against quad 1 opponents. They were only 4-9 against the top 5 teams in the Big 12. Their best series win in terms of RPI was Kansas State, who finished 55th and went 11-19 in Big 12 play. So it felt like, the Big 12 is going to get 6, going to get 7. 7 was the number we kept hearing until TCU kind of slid towards that last month or so. And so that's the only, knock I would put on how this thing shook out. Would have been nice to see them at least play 500 and have a chance to get in, but they really weren't, like I said, weren't as on the bubble as we thought.
Excellent. All right, so plenty more to come on regionals as we get you ready for the weekend ahead with baseball and the Big 12. All right, softball. So 4 Big 12 teams made it to super regionals this weekend. Only 1 advanced, and that's Texas Tech. Texas Tech and Florida, the theatrics, just incredible theatrics involved in this series. And we'll get to that in a second. But UCF, they go down to UCLA. Oklahoma State did not put up much of a fight against Nebraska. Arizona State, though, the hottest team at softball, after being the 6th seed in the Big 12 tournament, James, they get to a Game 3 against Texas after winning Game 1. Texas back to get to the wall, the defending champs, win 2 straight over Arizona State, but still a great season for Arizona State nonetheless. So 1 team advances into the Women's College World Series out of the Big 12, with 4 getting to the Super Regionals. And what a series it was in Gainesville. Before we kind of break down how it happened, it's important to start with what happened, and that would be the subplot of Mia Williams, the daughter of Jason Williams, White Chocolate, a Florida alum. Mia Williams went to Florida, was there for 2 years, helped to deliver Florida to the Women's College World Series last year. She transfers to Texas Tech, so she revisits as a part of Texas Tech's team in the Super Regionals. And it started off good because her first at bat, she got a nice ovation. But after that, it was just unbelievable theatrics. Jason Williams was at first kicked out of the stadium because he had words with a fan who apparently did something to his other daughter who was with him in the crowd. They plunked, Florida did, Mia Williams 5 times in this series, including 4 times in games 1 and 2. She hits 2 home runs, including the go-ahead home run in game 1. And then all of this reaches ahead in game 3, where there was even more theatrics. She was plunked again a 5th time. The Florida Gators were so upset that they refused to shake Texas Tech's hands after the game. So Texas Tech then went and celebrated right by their dugout. Then you had the manager of Florida, Tim Walton, basically acting like he had no idea what was going on with Mia Williams being hit so many times. James, this had everything. This series had everything, and some good, some bad, and some ugly in softball.
Yeah, and the Florida coach, Tim Walton, kept, to your point, saying that it was unintentional. Kids transfer all the time.
No idea what happened.
That was the line that he used. Kids transfer all the time. Well, this is not just a kid transferring all the time. Jason Williams is Mia's father, but then also her mother is a former Gator track star. She committed to Florida as a 12-year-old. She became the youngest recruit to ever commit to a Division I program at the age of 12. So, she was a Gator through and through. She was also an All-American. She had 19 home runs, batted .355, second-team All-American, first-team All-SEC, transfers to Tech. And when then you layer on top of that the fact that her best season of her career has been this year at Texas Tech under Jerry Glasgow. Single season record for home runs, runs scored, RBI, all the lists. The Florida pitcher had hit 20 batters all season before facing Texas Tech. In that super regional alone, she hit 5, and 4 of them were Mia Williams. So 16% of her season total happened in 3 games and were to Williams.
Yeah, here's what Jerry Glasgow said about the Mia Williams situation.
You know, it's a normal thing in this day and age for athletes to transfer. It happens every day, and we want to make a big deal out of it. That's uncalled for. And I thought for her to take the walk and then or another hit by pitch. I think she just hit 5 times on the first pitch, and then when they did pitch to her, she took the challenge and hit it out. Like, she won every battle that was thrown her way today, and I'm really proud of her. And I'm proud of my team for having her back and really. You know, they were protecting her at all costs, and they were going to come out of here with a win if at all possible. When you play a great team like Florida, a great team coached by a great coach like Tim Walton, nothing's guaranteed. But they absolutely made a dominant statement today, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get more into this, including what Jason Williams had to say about the entire weekend coming up in a moment. Plus, what does Texas Tech's road to a national championship look like now, with a huge upset in the Super Regionals with Mississippi State knocking off Oklahoma. More on softball on the way, plus the latest on the College Sports Commission and what Greg Sankey is saying from SEC Media Days. Plus, we set the table for Big 12 Media Days. It's all, or Big 12, spring meetings. Media Days and spring meetings all blend together.
A lot of meetings.
It's all coming up next with James Amari. It's Big 12 Today on a Tuesday, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Jackson's in trouble down. David Bailey, he is a sack machine. Third and 8.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Our series, The Road to Arlington, continues today as we're talking Baylor football, a deep dive breakdown into Baylor in about a half an hour from now. We're spending the entire hour breaking down Baylor football ahead of the 2026 season. So The Road to Arlington stopping in Waco today to give you the latest on Baylor football heading into this season. The spring meetings going on with the Big Ten last week, SEC this week, Big 12 this week. We'll be out at the Big 12 spring meetings tomorrow and Thursday. So we'll have coaches, athletic directors, plus all of the news that comes out of these spring meetings and the reaction to it. So stick with us throughout this week, of course, right here on your home for the Big 12 TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. A reminder to download the TuneIn app if you have not yet already, and make sure to favorite the channel. That way, Big 12 Radio shows up each and every time you open up the app. All right, so we talked briefly there about the theatrics involved with Mia Williams, Texas Tech, and Florida, and that Gainesville Super Regional you mentioned. I mean, Mia Williams, both her parents are Florida alums. Jason Williams, a very famed Florida alum. She had committed to Florida from the age of 12 years old, ends up transferring to Texas Tech and being a part of a huge season for the Red Raiders softball team. Here's what Jason Williams said on his social media accounts about what transpired over the weekend.
You guys see how them Florida Gators acted at the end of the game. They didn't really want to shake hands. They didn't want to do none of that. The crowd tried to get me ejected, this, that, and the third. Some fans hit my youngest daughter with some objects. We were asked if we wanted to press charges. Nah, we ain't about that. Let that little old lady live, man. She ain't got much longer to go, so let her go on and live, man. We didn't do nothing to her. She was just mad that the Gators was losing, and that's cool. That's what she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be mad when the Gators is losing if she's a real fan, but she ain't supposed to be hitting little girls with objects and shit like that, but yeah, that's for another day. Look, we moving on to the World Series. We want to do what's right, you know what I'm saying? We were cheering for our team. They was cheering for their teams. Things got out of hand. They said some stuff that they weren't supposed to say. We said some stuff we probably wasn't supposed to say, and that's just sports. That's what time it is. God knows what time it is in between the lines. So with that all being said, man, I just want everybody to know that I'm happy. I'm happy we won. You know, I'm a Florida Gator in my blood. Without Florida, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So like I said, they said some things they shouldn't have said, and we said some things we shouldn't have said. So we're sorry from our side. That's all I can say. And wreck them.
Well said from White Chocolate there.
Is he recording this video from the shoulder off the highway?
Sounds like it.
Look, it looks and sounds like he's standing on the interstate.
Yeah.
He also looks and sounds exactly like he did when he played at Florida and many years in the NBA. But it's a juicy, dramatic, intense situation. But it's not shocking because of her Florida background, the Florida family aspect. And I would add that because of that, I don't think Texas Tech, when they recruited her, just handed her a bag of money and said, we're just going to outbid you by so much that she has no other choice.
Even if they did, who cares?
Yeah, number one, who cares? Number two, like, Jason Williams played over a decade in the NBA. Like, they don't – it's kind of like the Koa Pete situation where, like, different backgrounds, different circumstances mean different things. I think Texas Tech sold her on everything else in addition to the NIL. And from his demeanor, like, you could tell there's something special about Texas Tech. That's why she's playing there. But it's really – there's a lot there, like, with the Florida coach. And Jason Williams went on to say that he was arguing balls and strikes and he got tossed intentionally because he didn't want to shake the Texas Tech players' hands after the game. And then you've got the pitcher's dad from Florida who had 20 hit batters all season long, ends up with 5 in this series alone. He's on Facebook defending his daughter. There's just a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the actual play on the field, on the diamond.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting from the standpoint of there's such a high level of irony here. So you can read between the lines with Tim Walton and Mia Williams, right? Where I'm assuming Texas Tech made an offer to Mia, and she goes back to Tim Walton and to Florida and says, "Here's the offer. Can you reach it?" Right? And who knows what the conversation was like? But I would imagine they basically said no. I mean, this is rich, as we've discussed with Tech. Like, they're not well liked. They are a villain because it's clear that they're exercising their ability to use NIL to their advantage, and it's not as widespread in softball as it is in other sports. But, I mean, like, can we stop for a moment and think about how insane it is for one of the richest programs in college sports to act like this with a Big 12 team? Like, this is Florida. Florida has all the money they want to possibly spend on football and basketball, and they do. And they could spend it on baseball, and they could spend it on softball, and they could spend it on all of the sports, and they do. And now they're upset at Texas Tech for doing that? I mean, in a moment, we're going to talk more and more about the College Sports Commission and the difficulty that's playing out right now, where the Big Ten and the SEC basically don't want to recognize the authority that the CSC has, even though they spent $50 million to establish this. And Florida is going to thumb their noses at Texas Tech for spending money in NIL? And on the other hand, basically say like, oh yeah, even though we set this whole College Sports Commission up to vet NIL deals to make sure that nobody's going above the cap with bad deals, the SEC and the Big Ten are basically rejecting this to go above the cap, and they're the ones that are going to say that what Texas Tech is doing at softball is wrong? Have you looked in the mirror, Florida? Are you out of your minds? It's insanity. The level of irony there and lack of self-awareness as an athletic department. I mean, look, maybe in softball you think this is the way things ought to be. You ought to look inside at what your athletic department is doing and have some semblance of understanding of the reality of the situation here. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. And the definition of entitlement, guaranteed privilege to receive a benefit, property, or service. I read a book a few years ago, Choose Your Hate. I absolutely hate entitlement. That's what this is. Florida feels entitled because they're Florida. They're in the SEC. They've been here. They don't like, many of these other programs don't like that somebody else has entered the chat, that somebody else is in their backyard. Financially, success, the new kid on the block.
Well, and more to the point, I'm sure many in the softball community feel like we don't want to pay the NIL game. And so you have basically a lot of schools that have the money, they're rejecting it.
Yeah.
Well, too bad.
Right. Texas Tech made their choice to fund their softball program at the appropriate levels, to bring in 5-star transfers, to go to back-to-back College World Series. That's your choice.
And the market has spoken. Yeah, the girls want to get paid and think that they're worth a certain amount.
They want to get paid. Texas Tech has also built a culture that I think a lot of other programs are jealous of because they get along. They don't have off-the-field drama. They have tremendous coaches.
It's all well said.
So entitlement and jealousy are two things that can drive a very hateful fan base and steer it towards a very specific program. And I love Texas Tech's path, by the way, with Mississippi State shocking Oklahoma. That's a huge gift for the Red Raiders.
Yeah. By the way, within this series, there were some great games. Game 1, Tech went up 7-1, then went up 8-4 at one point before Florida tied at the bottom of the 6th at 8-8. Then Mia Williams, of all people, hits the 2-run homer in the 7th to give Tech the lead, 10-8. That would be the final. Florida then would not go quietly into the night. They win Game 2, 10-2. And then Game 3 had everything. Tech came out hot. It was 3-0 after half an inning. Florida came right back and then took a 4-3 lead. There was then a weather delay that lasted 2 hours and 19 minutes. When play resumed, Tech struck for 4 runs and a pair of 2-run homers, one by Williams, her second of the series, and then one by Jackie Liz to go up 7-4. Florida then answered to make it 7-7, and then Tech ended it completely. Taylor Pennell hit a home run in the 3rd to take the lead. Liz extended it with the 2nd home run, a 3-run shot to make it 11-7. Pennell then added a 2-run homer an inning later Florida reliever Allison Sparkman then walked 5 straight batters in the 5th, 2 with the bases loaded before giving way. So, and then Florida coach Tim Walton was ejected at the bottom of the 5th, arguing balls and strikes with home plate umpire Paul Eds while he felt his team's season slipping away.
Yeah, Mia Williams, she was the best bat in the series. She finished 3 for 7. She had 2 home runs, 5 RBI. Like you said, that go-ahead blast in Game 1, the 2-run shot that reclaimed the lead after she had already been drilled by the first pitch of the game in Game 3. Like, she went back home in Florida's backyard in Gainesville and made sure everybody remembered her name. She crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. To be hit by a pitch on the very first pitch of the game and then respond in the way that she did. Awesome to see. Yeah. Awesome to see.
Yeah, and I mean, then of course at the end you have the Florida Gators deciding not to shake hands with Texas Tech.
That tells you everything you need to know in terms of like who's class and who's not.
Well, and not only that, but like once again, you go to these youth sporting events and you see parents screaming, getting into fights, and you don't shake their hands. You know, like where does this stuff come from? This comes from coaches. This comes from a coach getting ejected for arguing balls and strikes, and a coach that I'm sure told his team that, hey, we're doing it the right way and they're not. So afterwards, of course they don't want to shake the hands of Texas Tech. Of course they're going to be bad sports. All of their coaches and mentors across the way have told them that's justified behavior because that's the only way that I can read into that.
Yeah. Like, we've done things the right way. They're doing things the wrong way. And because we've done things the right way, refuse to shake their hands after the game.
Right, because they haven't.
Totally backwards. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. How right of a way are you doing it? So much so that you've decided to not show good sportsmanship.
The lack of self-awareness is it blows my mind.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about all of this with Kat Osterman, the legendary softball pitcher. She joins us to talk Women's College World Series, along with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Plus, we got the road to Arlington, Baylor coming up after Kat. That's all on the way. This is Big 12 Today on a post-Memorial Day Tuesday with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo. It's heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Second down, loads of time. He'll pass the ball. He'll wing it near side. Intercepted by Wall. Slant. McAllister tip ball. Interception BYU. And going back the other way. The cut inside. Now back to the outside. The shove. Hold on. Touchdown. King completes it. Little receiver screen. Good blockers out in front. A Rutherford and tripped up. Much to his angst. Speed option. Pitch to Hubbard. BYU closing quickly. It's Tanner Wall, the safety. Off the play action. Pass complete to C.J. Williams. It's been a long time between drinks and waters for 2nd and 5. Dickey, ball left tackle just tripped up as he was trying to get that line to gain. It was Tanner Wall, the safety, making the tackle.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo here on Big 12 today. Let's talk now with the legendary softball pitcher from Texas, Kat Osterman. Kat joining us here to break down what we saw in Super Regionals. How are you, Kat? Good morning.
I'm doing good. Another good morning. Softball rolls on.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's first talk about the Texas Super Regional with Arizona State. And when you think about Arizona State's path, I mean, a 6th seed of the Big 12 tournament, they win the Big 12 tournament, get the automatic bid, and then, end up taking Texas, the defending champs, to the brink. What'd you see from Kenzie Brown, who obviously put together an incredible run here, leading Arizona State all the way to the Supers, and, how was Texas able to overcome Kenzie?
Yeah, I thought from the onset that was probably going to go 3 games, and it was going to be tight because Kenzie's such a great pitcher. And night one, she did her thing. She was able to keep them off balance. She threw a lot of off speed. She has 2 different off speeds that she works with, and she was able to keep them pretty much at bay. A couple threats here and there that she got out of, but Arizona State rode the emotions they came in with, and were able to obviously take game 1. I think they said on the broadcast, Texas is 7 straight years that they've dropped game 1, so I don't know that they were stressed at all, because they've been able to make it to the World Series 4 times out of that. But, I think game 2, Mika Lupi was actually throwing really well. I'm not so sure they had to go to Kenzie Brown as early as they did, but Texas obviously knew they would see Kenzie at some point, and so you could just tell kind of a mind shift that they had a different approach when Kenzie went in the second time. And then by game 3, Kenzie left it all out there. I actually stood up and clapped for her as they took her off, because 1, you hate to see a stud arm in that way, but 2, just the way she carried them through postseason was absolutely incredible. And I think by game 3, she was just gassed out. She hadn't thrown 3 days in a row in a while. She didn't do that at Big 12s. Didn't have to obviously throw or start the game for Arizona State in the regional championship. So, that's just a different mindset and a different thing on your body when you get to game 3. So you have to tip your cap. She gave it her all. She did keep Texas off balance quite a bit. But I think in the end, Texas, the experience for Texas is what won out.
Kat, how should, with all the injury stuff that Arizona State had, how they surged towards the tail end of the season, I guess, number 1, how should Arizona State fans feel about the year that they had? And then what's the next step? Like, what's the one missing piece to get to a College World Series?
Yeah, Arizona State fans should be really excited. I mean, this is I think year 3 for Bartlett, and she, got them to Supers and really, 1 game away from making it to OKC. So that's exciting because they are playing well together. You see an exciting brand of softball coming to the field every single day. I think the big thing is, 1, you have to replace Kenzie Brown. Not sure who they have coming in to do that. And then 2, you need another strong arm. Mika Lupi came around this year, but for years prior to that, they didn't really have a strong number 2. So, and I think we see that with Texas too. Tegan Kavan is the one, but who's the number 2? On any day, it could be any one of the other 4 pitchers. It's not a consistent thing. So I think that's the big key because they have the offensive components. Tegan just got a little stronger as the Supers went on, which tends to be what she does somehow. And so it wasn't a Arizona State can't hit thing. It was more of an adjustment by Texas in their pitch calling. But very exciting things for the Sun Devils. I mean, I said in Big 12 Media Days, I thought Kenzie Brown was going to put a run for Big 12 Pitcher of the Year together, and I think she would have had she not been kind of semi-injured in the middle of the season where they let her sit for a while. Because she has some really electric stuff. So excited to see her take that to the pro level. But if you're an Arizona State fan, there's a lot to look forward to. You return a lot of big pieces. And, Megan Bartlett will hit the portal. I mean, she hit the portal last year and got Ulrich and Pond and some pieces that came to play, and she'll do that again.
Let's talk about Texas Tech and Florida. What a super regional it was. Incredible theatrics. But, Kat, what stood out to you about that series and how Texas Tech was able to take it?
Texas Tech they swing it, and they were able to get to Keegan Rothrock early. I think the flip side, Florida got to Nyjah and Caitlin Terry pretty early too, and so if I'm a Tech fan or really just a softball fan, it's going to be interesting to see how do they bounce back before Thursday. And is that a postseason lull? Is that being tired, fatigue coming into play? Like, what is it for, Florida to be able to jump on what a lot of people thought was probably the most solid duo in college softball going into the season, and especially going into the postseason. So it was interesting how much, I don't know what was going on down there, because those balls were just flying out of the park, more so than I think in any other super regional. And Florida's humid, so it's not like it's thin air. But I think every time you turned around, it was a home run. And so it'll be interesting to see who can contain the power, but at the same time, how they shore up with Nyjah and Caitlin Terry.
Texas Tech, a season high in runs, hits. They had 5 homers. How would you evaluate the way Mia Williams played in that series, in that third game? We already talked about all the drama and all the theatrics, but just her performance when it came to, her stat line and everything she did.
Yeah, well, I mean, she obviously got on base quite a bit. What I think has escaped for most people is she probably has taken 1,000 at bats off of Keegan Rothrock in the first 2 years of her career, because you enter squad all the time. And so she has a familiarity there. And so they were trying to exploit a hole, and she's obviously seen Keegan. So it's not like she has to work on getting timing or knows what she throws. And, but, I think she did a tremendous job when they did pitch to her and she got the ball out of the plate. She made him pay. And that's kind of part of it is, can you stay in your game to be able to attack when the pitch is in your hot zone? And so she was able to do that, which was really cool to see, because I think a lot of times some hitters will get in lulls just expecting the ball to stay in the same place every at bat, and until maybe the bases are loaded and you can't afford to put them on for free. But I think Mia was very familiar with her surroundings and who she was facing, so you could see that there was no uncomfortability whatsoever with her.
Kat, how did Mississippi State knock off Oklahoma, and what's wrong with Oklahoma?
I didn't watch game 3 because I was at Texas and we were driving and following obviously Florida and Tech, so I didn't see the complete game 3. But I think Sam Ricketts there, another Big 12 product back in the day, has just slowly been building that team to be a solid competitor. And I think they finally went in with kind of a why not us mentality. And interesting enough, a pitcher who had, I want to say someone told me like 13 innings all year, ended up throwing the complete game.
Yeah.
So twofold there. I don't know, maybe OU didn't scout her a ton, or maybe it was just her day. I did see something online that, there was like 3 aspects. One of them I don't remember, but it was like her parents' anniversary and her dad had passed or something like that. So it was like the universe aligned for that pitcher kind of. But offensively, would never have thought OU would have gotten shut out. Getting beat, I know the pitching has kind of been the question for them all year. They really haven't they've had Lowry as their solid ace, but they haven't really had consistency of someone to like truly be, even though she's the ace, to be the dominant shutdown ace all the time. And so I think in the long game, they just didn't have the dominance in the circle that we're used to seeing from the Sooners. That, when you have that, it feeds into the offense a lot of times. The offense, I mean, I can't attest, but I believe probably in offense at certain points, it's like pitching has to do their job too. Offense can't just always be what carries you.
Yeah, Delaney Everett was the pitcher for Mississippi State, and it was her parents' anniversary. Her dad had passed away a few years ago, and she had only pitched like 13 innings all season long.
Crazy. And
was just nails. That is a story that writes itself. So what will be the keys for Texas Tech against this Mississippi State team that's obviously playing with a lot of emotion?
Yeah, I think they both come in with emotion. If I remember right, I think it's a regional matchup from last year. So Mississippi State did put up some runs against Texas Tech last year. So I think they're going to have a game plan. But, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit back and forth. I do think Mississippi State's probably going to have to get creative with the pitching staff, similar to what Texas Tech did to Florida with Nyjah and Caitlin both being in the hitting lineup, able to go back and forth, but use their 2 or 3 arms in different ways to keep Tech off balance because, Tech is coming in with a ton of confidence, especially offensively.
Who do you think takes it? Do you think Texas goes back-to-back here?
I'd love for Texas to go back-to-back. I think everyone has said it in the softball world. It could be anyone's year. Alabama's still playing very, very well. They're on that other side of the bracket. I do think Texas has the hardest matchup from the jump with Tennessee facing off probably one of the best staffs in the country. But they faced off last year in the World Series too. So I do think it's anyone's game. I mean, it's no secret I'm going to be pulling for the horns, but I think any one team that is inspired by something external can easily make a run. I think part of that for Texas last year was Tegan Cavan's grandma passing in the middle of the World Series. It gave her kind of that little, why that you just can't beat. And I think the team rallied around it too.
Yeah. Kat, I think everybody remembers, like Texas, their pedigree, and Texas Tech being there last year. So, like, without Oklahoma in the mix, and you mentioned Alabama just a moment ago. Outside of Texas Tech and Texas, what's the other program? Is it Alabama that you have your eye on or that people should know about the most?
Yeah, I think it's Alabama. The wild card to me could be Arkansas. They've been really good all year long. They finally broke through to make it to OKC. They've hosted Supers a couple times and haven't been able to get that last win to get to Oklahoma City. And so that's kind of my wild card to see how they do because they do have a really good pitching staff too. And while it's not necessarily firework offense like a Tech, they can put runs up on the board in different ways. But yeah, I think my eyes are probably Tech, Texas, and Alabama. But like I said, Tennessee and Arkansas could be some wild cards.
Yeah, and who's like Tennessee's pitcher is insane. Like, who's your favorite pitcher to watch?
I watch a lot of Tegan Cavan, obviously. I just like how stoic she is. Tennessee, though, the combination between Pickens with how hard she throws and down and Sage Marjeko this year. Sage Marjeko has absolutely been unbelievable. And Megan Rhodes Smith there has done a great job of kind of fine-tuning her. She was good at South Carolina, but she's been even better at Tennessee. And she's fun to watch because she really moves it around, changes speeds. Still throws relatively hard, but she's not a power pitcher. She's kind of one of those that if you want to learn the craft, you can watch and see her manipulate the ball quite a bit.
Kat Osterman, legendary softball player, of course, has done a great job with joining us. Of course, she also does a great job with ESPN. Thank you so much, Kat, as always. Enjoy the Women's College World Series. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
See you, Kat.
So much fun to visit with the legend, Kat Osterman, here on Big 12 Radio. Mentioning, of course, that she wants to see her alma mater go back-to-back, but there's lots of teams that could win it out of these 8 that are left here in the Women's College World Series, which starts this weekend in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, Tennessee's dangerous because of their pitching staff. Texas Tech, I just cannot wait to see what happens with them in this Mississippi State team that's had a storybook season. They are the lowest seeded team left. So, like, on paper, Texas Tech might have the best matchup to get through to that next round. And then Alabama and Nebraska on the other side are the 1 seeds. Arkansas and UCLA are the 2s in bracket 2. But again, just not seeing Oklahoma, it feels way more open than historics and traditionally it looks like going in because Oklahoma's not there.
Yeah, Oklahoma has missed the College World Series. Basically, this is the second time they're missing the College World Series since 2011. They have gone every single year to the Women's College World Series since 2011, with the exception being, I think it was 2015 and now 2026. Man, pretty unbelievable. That is James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. The road to Arlington is next. Taking a look at Baylor. Biggest question marks, biggest gamble, trap game, biggest game in the 3-game stretch that will define their season. As we do a deep dive into every Big 12 team, the road to Arlington stops in Waco, Texas next. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Still looking downfield, and it's intercepted. Trayden Stukes, first of all, made a great play to pick that one off.
He's successful. Pick up the blitz. Salter's in trouble. The game is It's really moving too fast for him right now. Stoops again comes through to get him on a loss of 2.
He's got time. His pass to the sideline is intercepted. Traden Stoops with a purloined pigskin. Robertson has to check it down. And again, Arizona is there to crunch it. Traden Stoops leads the defense. Johnson is hit, and he is dropped. Traden Stoops was shot out of a cannon.
He's ready to pressure because the safety got him capped. And what's he do? Runs through the back and gets to Avery Johnson.
Sawyer Robertson looking for the lead. Intercepted instead. Traden Stoops on his senior day.
The road to Arlington continues here on Big 12 Radio. We are keeping the football season alive, doing various series across the entire offseason to feature Big 12 football programs, including doing the top 5 newcomers at every position, the top 5 players at every position. We did a pre-spring discussion on each team, and now we're doing a deep dive road to Arlington post-spring updates about each team and answering some of the biggest and most important and impactful questions about their season. Cheers to all you Modelo full-time fans. Hopefully you enjoyed some Modelos over this Memorial Day weekend. I know I did. And, and of course, as we lift up a Modelo to cheers, we always say, there is no off season. There is only research. So that's what we're doing here right now. All right, let's get into it. Road to Arlington, Baylor. Biggest question mark, James.
Man, there were a lot to choose from. I went with the obvious one, Project Lagway. I'm calling it. The highest-rated recruit out of high school to ever play at Baylor. Former 5-star, former number 1 quarterback in 2024. We know about his ceiling. We know about the flashes that he showed at Florida. But last year he threw 14 interceptions. And Baylor was a team that really struggled with turnovers on both sides of the ball. They couldn't get takeaways. They were turning the ball over a lot offensively. So to bring in a quarterback that had the most interceptions among any Power 4 quarterback in the nation, who also has dealt with multiple injuries that kept him out of spring practice, most of preseason camp going into last year. We know what the rest of the season looked like with Billy Napier getting canned, Lagway considered overrated, but he's still a 5-star, all-the-tools quarterback. So he could be really good. It could also blow up in their face. I call it Project Lagway.
Yeah, I like that. I also went with, can Lagway be recovered? Can he be fixed? I have 2 questions, though, and those 2 questions are, can Lagway be fixed? And how much can one new DC fix a defense in one off season? Let's start with Lagway. I mean, you hit on it. 16 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, led the SEC in interceptions. 10 of those picks came in 3 games, including 5 interceptions in a 20-10 loss at LSU. The question entering fall camp is whether Lagway's interception tendency was a product of Florida's chaos, coaching upheaval, injury disruption, poor surrounding talent, or something else. The other thing that I'm interested to see with Lagway is what's his body weight at Big 12 Media Days, because he has sort of teetered on a little bit too heavy. So it'd be interesting to see kind of what he's going to be playing at this upcoming season. The other one is the Clanderman improvement on the defensive side of the football. Baylor had the 122nd ranked scoring defense last season, finishing dead last in the conference in sacks. So it'll be interesting to see how much can Clanderman improve this defense over one off season. We shall see. All right, biggest gamble, James.
Yeah, biggest gamble for me is retaining Dave Aranda, because it's a unique situation. They didn't keep him because they believed in him versus they kept him because letting him go, firing him, was too expensive. His buyout exceeds $15 million. They had just fired their previous AD, hired a new one. The coaching carousel, when all this is going down, is already super crowded. So that's why Dave Aranda stayed, not because Baylor demanded that he's back for another year after going 22-26, 4 games below 500, 4 games below 500 in Big 12 play, 15-19 over the last 4 seasons. The incoming AD was given authority to reassess the football program. So Dave Aranda, he's coaching under a clock that he doesn't necessarily control unless they have a breakthrough season. So I go retaining head coach Dave Aranda.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. I think the other big one is the offensive bet here on DJ Lagway. Aranda's coaching future is tied directly to Lagway. He doesn't have to win at a 10 to 11 game level quite yet, but he needs at least 9 this year, I would think, 8 to 9. 14 of the 22 projected starters entering fall camp are transfer portal acquisitions. So, and then, Lagway is, to me, out of all of those transfer portal acquisitions that are factored into starters this year, Lagway is the most impactful. The investment in Lagway as the program's quarterback, it's a huge gamble here. I mean, it's a guy that at one point was a 5-star, one of the highest recruited quarterbacks, in the country, and the 16 touchdowns and 14 interceptions last year, including 28 touchdowns to 23 interceptions in his career. And that's a significant gamble here for a program that feels like its coach is on its last leg. So you've got a boom or bust thrower representing a coach in what could be his final season. Huge gamble there with DJ Lagway. All right, what's the trap game?
Yeah, the trap game that I felt like had the most ingredients because there were a lot to choose from is Colorado at home on September 26th. And I say that because Baylor opens the season at Auburn, neutral site, but it's still right in Auburn's backyard. And then they get Prairie View and Louisiana Tech. So they should be at worst 2-1, maybe 3-0 if they upset Auburn. Should be feeling really good about themselves when Colorado comes to Waco. But remember, Colorado's on the road for 3 of their first 4 games. So they'll be used to playing power conference teams on the road. Georgia Tech, Northwestern, then Baylor. Colorado could be really desperate for a signature win. And at 4-0 or even 3-1 with a Colorado win, you're feeling like the Save Dave Aranda project is on track. But if you lose that game and you're 2-2, and then you look at the rest of their games just around the corner, a bunch of them on the road, Baylor could be in big trouble. So Colorado, September 26th is my trap.
The trap game for me is actually fairly obvious, at least to me, and that is the Iowa State game. Because you have Iowa State at home to start November, and then you close with arguably the 3 best Big 12 teams at BYU versus Texas Tech and at Houston. Plus, and I'll get into this further in a second, this follows Baylor at Kansas, at UCF, back-to-back stretch. So you look at their schedule, and it's tough at times, but there's also some winnable stretches here. Feels like the Iowa State game comes, again, right before the toughest stretch of the season with the 3 best teams of the Big 12, and follows 2 consecutive road games that are very winnable with Kansas and UCF. So it's a trap game from the standpoint if you're going home against a team you should beat at home in year 1 with Jimmy Rogers. It's a total trap game in that spot where it's following 2 straight road games and precedes 3 of the toughest games on the schedule. So Iowa State, to me, November 7th is that trap game. All right, what is the biggest game?
Yeah, so for the biggest game, I went with their season opener because I think it's going to answer a lot of questions. I know it's a long season. There's 13 regular season games, or 12 regular season games over 13 weeks this year, not factoring in the Army-Navy week. But September 5th, Atlanta, Georgia, ABC, primetime, mid-afternoon game, the revenge game for Baylor. Auburn, remember, waxed them in Waco last year, 38-24, had over 300 rushing yards. Baylor simply could not get off the field. But also, Auburn opens as a 7.5-point favorite, by the way. But DJ Lagway, if there's one quarterback that's going to be familiar with this brand of football, this style, it's DJ Lagway because he's played Auburn as the quarterback at Florida. So I think you win this game and Baylor has a really big story going into the rest of the season. You lose this game, it magnifies the Colorado game a couple of weeks later, and you're playing catch-up from day one. So I had the biggest game right out of the gate against Auburn.
Yeah, I also have that as the biggest game as well because it's also a big game for the Big 12. Look, I mean, getting off to a quick start in 2026 is really important for Dave Aranda to try to keep his job. Baylor lost at home to Auburn at 25 in the season opener, and I think that set the tone for the entire 5-7 season. Both programs have upgraded or believe they're dramatically upgraded. They both went 5-7 last year, and this is a neutral site, quote-unquote, showcase game for the Big 12, for Baylor. Kickoff at 2:30 on ABC for a nationally televised game. So I just think the stakes are really high. If they lose this game, you think the Baylor feeling is, the fan feeling is, oh, here we go again, same old Bears. And, I just think that creates a high level of anxiety. Whereas if they win it, suddenly it looks like they've turned the page. It's a really big win for the Big 12. So I just feel like this is a measuring stick game for Baylor off the bat, a measuring stick game for the Big 12. It's the reason it is the biggest game for me of the schedule. So I agree with you there. All right, the 3-game swing stretch, James.
So swing stretch, I go Saturday, October 24th through one of the games that you had this as your trap game, Saturday, November 7th against Iowa State. So the 3-game stretch is at Kansas, at UCF, and then at home against Iowa State. Because 2 of those 3 look winnable on paper on the road. And if Baylor's going to be a 7, 8, 9-win football team, you have to win games on the road in this league. Those look winnable. The only reason I'm not using the last 3 games, which are at BYU, Texas Tech, and at Houston, is by that point in time, it could be too late. If you don't have quality road wins in this league, if you've been upset at home by Iowa State or Colorado, BYU, Texas Tech, and Houston don't matter if you're 3-6 going into those last 3 games. So I go with that stretch before it, KU, UCF, and Iowa State, because I think Baylor needs 2 and maybe all 3 of those to be on the right side of what is Dave Aranda's future.
We agree. I have the exact same 3-game stretch. October 24th at Kansas, October 30th at UCF, and then November 7th versus Iowa State. They play Saturday, Friday, Saturday. And look, I think they need to go 3-0 in that stretch in order to have the type of bounce-back season they're expecting to have and to save Aranda's job at the very least. So back-to-back road games are easy to lose, and then they come home before a brutal stretch to close with Iowa State. So I think to your point, like, I don't know how many of those last 3 people expect them to win. I would say if they win one of those last 3, they'd be in pretty good shape. But pretty good shape, quote-unquote, so long as they take care of business in the preceding 3 weeks, which is exactly the same 3-game stretch that you and I agree on here. So totally agree. Their schedule is really interesting from the standpoint of some really winnable stretches and then some really losable stretches. But I think that stretch in particular is one they've got to go 3-0 in order to really be the type of team that they need to be in order to save Aranda's job.
Yeah, I mean, I see a path. I think best case scenario going into those last 3 games is they're 7-2. You know, they've got some toughies against TCU, but it's at home. They play Arizona State on the road. They play Auburn in Atlanta. So the 2 games I think they're most likely to lose are probably Auburn and at Arizona State. But again, like, Auburn's going through a lot of transition. They've got a new coach. They had a lot of their top high-end talent transfer out. So that's not a game I'm not 100% convinced that Baylor can't win. I think they could go in there and maybe pull that upset. Either way, with Kansas and UCF both on the road, I think it's hard to get a sweep there. Those are must-win games for both of those programs. So I see best case 7-2, maybe 6-3 going into those last 3 games. But if you're like 5-4 or even 4-5, 9 games in, they could be in a lot of trouble.
All right, we'll hear what Dave Aranda had to say during spring football and in the aftermath of spring football. Plus, we dig into the hidden strength, the one player they can't lose, the number, the pressure point, what success actually looks like, why they will, and why they will not win the Big 12 as we continue on the road to Arlington, Baylor with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Cheers to you, Modelo full-time fans. We are presented by Modelo here on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios.
Blitz coming, jailbreak, and they run the perfect play. It's small, he's big, he's down, inside the 5 to the 1. BJ Payne tripped him up to save the touchdown. What an effort here.
And there it is. They fake the handoff and to the backside. And another tackle for loss at the 20, this time by VJ Payne. They tried to get the man on the edge on the far side, and VJ was having none of it.
It's always about how you finish. Kobe Williams hit by Payne. Second down. And he'll make you pay. Handoff. Parker gets stuffed, stays on his feet, and now he's going to go down. Well, play the drop. Hands off to Highshaw. Steps for an ankle tackle and rumbles below the 30. Got him to the turf.
Kansas State going to try and put some pressure on it. Floor steps up, floats one toward the end zone, does not have a receiver there. And that's an interception to end the half. BJ Payne with his first interception of the year.
4th downs this year. A big one in this second half. Brown stopped originally, and the ball comes out. Is the play dead, though? The whistles came after the ball came out.
This is the road to Arlington, Baylor, along with James Westling, Amari Tepkin. Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Talk with Craig Smoke from 365 Sports about Baylor coming up in about 15 minutes. We've also got our one player they can't lose, the hidden strength, the number, pressure point, what success looks like, why they will or why they won't hit the Big 12 championship. But let's hear what Dave Aranda had to say first about what he wants his team to be known for this season.
We want to be tough. We want to be smart. We want to be dependable. The tough part starts with your mental toughness. And so that's been, we really made it hard in off season. So off season was longer than what it's normally been. By about 3 weeks, it's been longer. And so what we did there was make it more events in the stadium, more kind of competitions where you really have to be taxed at the end of the session. There's a study that was done, and the number one criteria for winning was winning the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. And so, especially in our league, where everything is just so tight that who wins it, down the stretch. And so all the things that we got set up from winter through spring and through summer is going to be, hey, the whole thing's tough, and at the very end it's going to get tougher. And we have to have standards and choices over what we feel. And we want to be able to continue to do that to be the team we need to be.
All right, so there you go. Dave Aranda, always deep diving.
Always.
Who's the one player they can't lose?
So quarterback DJ Lagway, his turnover problem at Florida really came down to instability on the offensive line, bad coaching, and injury issues that he dealt with. So when I look at Baylor, the thing I highlight is the offensive line and the guy that's going to be protecting his blind side, because he's got to stay clean, he's got to stay upright for them to be on schedule. So that is Cole Rett, the offensive tackle. Remember, the offensive line is going through a complete overhaul as well. Cole Rett is maybe their most experienced guy. At 6'7", 301 pounds, he started 26 games at Toledo, had a really impressive run blocking grade. DJ Lagway is elusive and can scramble if he has to. His run blocking grade was elite for any conference, whether it's the MAC or the Big 12. He was part of an offensive line, and Toledo's best offensive lineman that led their league in scoring in yards and passing yards. So I look at Cole Rett as kind of being a really underrated key guy that they have to have out there on the field.
Wow, you went with a Toledo tackle.
Left tackle.
Wow. Player they can't lose is Hosea Wheeler. Risk. There's pretty significant risk here because it does appear that he's eligible, but we'll see if that changes. The reward with Wheeler is you have the perfect nose for Aranda's defense. He could potentially be the difference between a bad or a good defense in 2026 for Baylor. And maybe even a chance at a surprise run for a conference title, depending on how good he is. Wheeler's the 6'3", 300-pound defensive tackle that transfers in from Indiana. He first went to Sacramento City College, which is how he's getting the next year of eligibility. Went to Western Kentucky, was two-time All-Conference USA selection. Second team at 23, then transfers to Indiana. Appeared in all 16 games for Indiana. 5 starts, 31 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 11 quarterback pressures, and 2 fumbles recovered while logging 420 defensive snaps. So Wheeler adds some national championship DNA to that defense. This was a unit that ranked 122nd in scoring defense last season. So Wheeler's the anchor of everything defensively for Baylor. If you lose Wheeler in weeks 2 or 3 or later on in the season, I think Clatterman's running a nose tackle position with no experience and or weight to deal with the Big 12 interior offensive line. So for me, nobody bigger in terms of who they would be missing than Hosea Wheeler, transfer for Baylor from Indiana, who again is listed on Baylor's official roster, so it looks like he is eligible for the season.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to look at, like we both highlighted the trenches, because they're also really thin behind those guys. Like they don't have a Hosea Wheeler type defensive tackle on the roster if he can't go. They don't have a backup left tackle. Their backup left tackle is a redshirt freshman, and the other backup tackle is a transfer from UAB who wasn't even a full-time starter. So that just highlights the importance of those two guys. Hidden strength for me, I went with the run game. So we talk a lot about Lagway and the defense, how it has to be better, but quietly they get Dawson Pendergrass back. He missed all of last season with that foot injury. He was a 700-yard guy 2 years ago, and Bryce Washington really wasn't the same back last year because he was dealing with injury issues, and I think part of that had to do with the fact that he didn't have Pendergrass as that 1-2 punch. Pendergrass averaged almost 6 yards per carry, but now you pair him with Caden Knighton and Michael Turner, two high-level freshmen who combined for almost 800 yards last year as the backups. Now they're a year older. Lagway's physical dimension to the run game at 6'5", 230. He didn't run a ton at Florida, but he's a capable runner. So you combine all that together, and I think their hidden strength could be their ground game.
Yeah, that's a good call. I actually went with their offensive line, which is probably surprising to some folks because it's viewed as a major question mark. But I think there's very legitimate upside here with this O-line, especially because they've got a ton of talent, and they, to me, don't actually lack depth because they've got a bunch of guys they brought in from the portal. They've got a bunch of guys that are high four-star recruits. I mean, they've got 6-7 guys they brought in that are former blue chips or experienced players in other systems. So, I mean, you've got the Siriaki brothers that give, I think, Baylor's offensive line a good foundation. Plus, you add new offensive line coach Austin Woods, who to me is much more aligned with Jake Spavital. But it starts with the Siriaki brothers. Colton is the 6'4", 314-pound center who steps into the center position after they lose Colton Price to Kentucky. Caden is the right tackle. He's the redshirt senior, 6'9", 309 pounds. He's just a monster of a man. He's the unit's most experienced player. Started all 12 games at right tackle last year. And then they have 2 4-stars coming in, and Donnell Robinson, a 2026 4-star interior offensive lineman, 6'4", 290 pounds. And then Isaiah Robinson, so 2 4-stars named Robinson, not related. Isaiah is 6'6", 280 pounds from Arlington Lamar High School. Plus they have Matthew Parker, who was a former high 3-star, nearly 4-star, 6'7", 315 pounds. He redshirted last year as a high 3-star coming in, and so he comes in as a redshirt freshman this year with a bit more seasoned. You mentioned that Logan Moore, the UAB transfer, 6'8", 290 pounds, played 11 games at left tackle for UAB in 2025. Nate Kibble transferred from Texas. You mentioned Colrett, Yakiri Walker, Cooper Lovelace, Harrison Clough. So I just think offensive line is a hidden strength because I don't think a lot of people look at it and think of it as a strength because they've got a lot of positions open, including left tackle. But I just think what they have competing for me makes it a major hidden strength. I think the offensive line will be a plus this year with Austin Woods taking over. All right, what's the number?
Love the offensive line note, by the way. Thought the same thing when we were doing our portal breakdown. I was like, Baylor brought in a ton of experience. Can it gel? The number for me is minus 1.4. Minus 1.4 was Baylor's turnover margin per game last season, which ranked 135th out of 136 FBS teams, dead last in the Big 12. The offense turned it over. The defense couldn't create takeaways. And now you bring in the leading interception thrower in all of Power 4 to try and fix it. Defensively is where Joe Klanderman could make a huge difference. That was his calling card at Kansas State. Kansas State was really good at sacking the quarterback, applying pressure, forcing bad throws, and creating turnovers. And they did it year after year with Klanderman calling those defensive plays. So that's a legitimate plan to improve that, but that's a number that has to be better. Minus 1.4, almost 1.5 per game for Baylor a season ago.
We have the exact same narrative, but a different number. My number is 135. And that plays into what you just talked about, ranking 135th out of 136 teams at the turnover margin per game at minus 1.4. To me, that's the entire season because you just mentioned it. DJ Lagway comes in with a ton of turnovers. This is a team last year that defensively could not generate turnovers, and the offense turned the ball over too much, so it was just a bad combination of too many turnovers for the offense, and the defense couldn't save the offense with any turnovers. So I think that's a huge part to this, and here's what Dave Aranda said about Klanderman coming in to help on the defense.
I think anytime that you're not successful, it's difficult. I think one of the biggest things that I found freeing was not being the head coach and the DC really allowed us to have, like, spend more money on defense. This is the most money we've spent on defense since I've been here. And so I think one of the things that held me back being on defense and also being the head coach was that, I didn't want it to overload that side of the ball. And then you come back and you look at it, and we didn't do enough. We should have done a whole lot more on the line of scrimmage, and we made sure that we did this time, as well as our linebacker and secondary. So I think, whereas in the past, the money was, you look at last year, the majority of the money of our team was spent on the receiver room, almost way too much, to be honest. And so that money is now spent on defense. And I felt it freeing to not be in a position where I could just say, Joe, we're going to get you everything you need.
All right, so there you go. Opened up about, defensively, probably didn't spend enough money on the defensive side of the football, which is a major reason for the results to be what they were. Again, Baylor was 122nd in scoring defense last year, and we just mentioned it, 135 out of 136 Division I schools in the turnover margin per game.
It was really interesting that he said, because I'm no longer calling the plays and because I'm no longer the defensive coordinator, that allowed us to spend more money on defense. Was Dave Aranda being paid a defensive coordinator salary on top of his head coaching salary? And that's not up to him. That's his agent trying to get as much bang for his buck as he can. But I just thought that was a really intriguing note that you don't usually hear from coaches.
Well said. All right, what is your pressure point?
It is Dave Aranda. I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry. 7 years, a game below 500, 36-37, some really good seasons and some really bad seasons. And last year's Baylor team was expected to compete for a Big 12 championship. And frankly, they weren't close. They had a lot of NFL talent, and they just couldn't put it together. A ton of close losses. They couldn't get key stops. He has the hottest seat in the Big 12. We've got over all the reasons why. New AD, buyout that was $15 million last year has been reduced significantly. The AD is going to do a complete reassessment of the football program, and that starts right away. So week 1 against Auburn, that is the pressure point. It is Dave Aranda.
Yeah, I would say this is the most obvious pressure point in this entire series. It's Dave Aranda. He's 36-37 overall at Baylor and 22-28 since winning the conference championship in 2021, with records of 15-21 in Big 12 play during that span. So a third losing season in 4 years. His fourth sub-500 finish in 6 seasons did not cost him his job because of administrative turmoil, and because he's a great guy by all accounts. I think he's done a good job to sort of save his own rear end based on just his mentality, who he is as a person. So credit to him for that. But Aranda has acknowledged the stakes publicly. Like, this isn't a surprise. He's read the columns. He's heard the podcasts. He's seen the message boards. He knows the season he needs to have. So what does success actually look like for Baylor this year?
Well, for me, based off of last season, I think if it was a coach at a different stage in his coaching tenure, you would say make a bowl game. I don't know that that's enough. I think success for me is 8 wins. They opened as 6.5 as their over-under. You win the Auburn game on a national stage, that's a major shot in the arm. You don't drop that Colorado trap game, all of a sudden you're 4-0. To get to 8 wins, Lagway's interception total has to drop to single digits. That minus 1.4 has to flip on its head and at least be even, if not plus, which is what Clanderman did every year at Kansas State. There is a path. But I think success with the schedule and kind of that lighter middle chunk, I think it's 8 wins for Baylor this year, an 8-4 regular season.
Yeah, I've got 8+ wins, so I'm in the same vein of what you're talking about. I think, in many ways, 8 wins would validate the Lagway recruitment, establishes the roster as a legit Big 12 title contender for 2027. And for me, it's not necessarily about the number of wins, but it's about who do you beat. Do you beat Auburn to open up the season? Are you beating Kansas, UCF, and Iowa State in that swing stretch? Are you competitive against Tech? Are you able to knock off one of BYU or Houston? For me, it's not necessarily about how many games you win, but also who you beat. I think a 7-win regular season would be close for Aranda to keep his job, depending on, how much, momentum they build for a title run in 2027. It means, but 8 wins in the regular season to me would be the icing on the cake in terms of definitely keeping his job. All right, why will they win the Big 12, James?
Man, excuse me, a lot of things would have to go maybe even better than right. I mean, it would have to be the perfect storm. DJ Lagway would have to be an all Big 12 caliber quarterback. And again, cut his interceptions from 14 down to, let's say, 8, almost in half. Defense generates some takeaways. Wheeler is playing this year, and he's an anchor on that defensive line. Those are all the things that has to happen for them to be in the conversation for a Big 12 championship game. I think the receivers, the guys, the holdovers and the transfers, they're okay there. I love what they've done on the offensive line, which you brought up earlier. I love the fact that they get Pendergrass back. Like, there is a path, but again, all of this stuff has to happen simultaneously. It can't just be you pick and choose one or the other.
Yeah, how will they win the Big 12? I think all the question marks get answered affirmatively. I mean, Lagway, just the measurables, the size, the strength, the arm strength, not exactly something that most Big 12 defenses are built to handle. And I think with Spavital planning a more aggressive downfield attack, plus, the new receiver room, and you get Pendergrass back. Offense wasn't the issue if the defense is fixed. We saw Klanderman really build up Kansas State's defense over the years. So if Lagway becomes the guy that he was expected to be at Florida, and then the defense is not terrible, this is a team that could absolutely find its way to Arlington. Why won't they win the Big 12, James?
Lagway struggles with turnovers. The turnover margin is still in the negative. And I don't think that, like, that turnover margin in the scoring defense, you can't go from minus 1.4 to minus 1.
Right.
The scoring defense, you can't be ranked 122nd and finish in the 80s and think you have a chance to bring back Dave Aranda for next year and be an 8 or a 9 win team. So there are a lot of things that could go weird. And then their schedule. Man, those last 3 games at Houston, BYU, and Texas Tech, like, how many of those games is Baylor winning? So even if you're 6-3 going into that stretch, those are 3 really, really tough games. So there's a lot of reasons why they couldn't win it.
Yeah, the road to Arlington for Baylor in 2026 runs through DJ Lagway's decision-making under pressure, a defense that's learning an entirely new system, and an offensive line that doesn't yet know exactly who's going to be on it. Championship runs don't typically emerge from that kind of a foundational uncertainty. Baylor's ceiling in 2026 to me is a surprise 9-win season. Their floor is 5-7 again. The most likely outcome is somewhere in the 7-5 range. Meaningful progress, but certainly not Arlington. All right, let's talk about it with Craig Smoke from 365 Sports next. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Right there, number 20, pulling around, he gets up into the hole and hits Roberts, and that just buys a little bit of space.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, and this is our Road to Arlington series talking Baylor football. Let's talk now with Craig Spoke from 365 Sports. Craig, how are you?
Doing great, Ari. Good to talk to you as always, man. Good to kind of be in this time of year where we start to preview and ramp up a little bit. So doing great. Glad to talk some football and be with you guys this morning.
Yeah, great to have you on with us. All right, so we're talking Baylor football here in the Road to Arlington. Where is your optimism level for this team?
I would love to say that it was super high and that everybody's just, chomping at the bit to get football started in Waco. But I think now that we enter year 7 of Dave Aranda, which is wild for me to say, man. I've been covering this program for a long time, but I mean, 7 years. I've started to kind of put it this way. I don't know successful head coaches year after year that lasts somewhere 7 years, right? Like that's an eternity in college football. So it's been the Dave Aranda show for a long time. I think last year we might have seen the last episodes, if not for a changeover at athletic director that was very unexpected. So it's another year of Aranda. It's a new athletic director. I think people are cautiously optimistic given a couple of the moves made during the offseason. But Ari, I think it's just kind of at this point hoping that there's a breakthrough, but not really being all that optimistic that that's the case. So I think everybody's just kind of in wait-and-see mode, and if anything, more leaning towards wanting a fresh start. But Dave Aranda's still the guy, so let's hope he can be successful since he's still the guy.
Yeah, we see a lot of things that would have to click for Baylor to have a breakthrough. What's the biggest thing to you? And if it's DJ Lagway, what's the second biggest thing to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think DJ Lagway is the guy who, if you don't sign him, I'm not sure really where the optimism is at all for this team. The fact that you were able to go and get him kind of did add just something to the mix that got people excited and got people thinking that, all right, like maybe we can do a little something this year. So I would say he is at the top of the list. But on the opposite side of that, another option would be the defense. I mean, it's something that you think would have been super solid all throughout the Aranda tenure, and that's just simply not been the case. It's been very up and down. He's been like de facto official, unofficial defensive coordinator like a couple of times over now. So there's no, fixing that through Aranda. So he goes and hires Joe Klanderman this offseason from Kansas State. Klanderman brings in a handful of his Wildcats to help fill out this defense. They've got some good young players returning on that side of the ball. So I think with the offense kind of staying pat coaching-wise and getting the big Lagway addition on the defensive side is where you could probably see the most improvement, and that's just simply by Aranda giving the reins over fully, giving his 2 cents here and there, but letting Klanderman hopefully give them a changeover that makes them a defense that can help them win some football games rather than a unit that, because of who the head coach was, often kind of felt disappointing given you were expecting something of dominance and it just wasn't quite there. So I think DJ Lagway, but then Joe Klanderman as defensive coordinator is an area where you hope that change can be a big thing and really change your fortunes this year.
Yeah, and let's dig a little bit further on the defense. Hosea Wheeler is a guy that I think could be a huge factor for Baylor defensively. How much are you buying some of the optimism on defense?
I'm buying it. I do think that Aranda just kind of getting away from it is a good thing. It just seems like it's been an extra stressor on top of what is already a pile of stressors for him as a head coach at this point. So I think being able to just focus his attention elsewhere. I'd be more optimistic, guys, if we hadn't kind of already done this, though. We kind of had done this a couple of times before, as I mentioned, and so I think it was needed. I think it's great to have a fresh set of eyes. I think it's great to have a guy who's got experience in the Big 12. I do think Wheeler, for example, him coming over from Indiana, you hope he brings some of those habits. You hope he brings some of those Signetti traits, and the rest of the defense can kind of be better because of what he and other newcomers do bring to the table. But I don't expect anything drastic. I don't think they suddenly become like a top force in the country, but I do think they stand to get a lot better there. So if they do, then that's the difference in maybe winning a couple more games. And instead of being barely bowl eligible, then you're comfortably in the postseason and you're giving yourself a chance to maybe be in the mix in a potentially chaotic Big 12. So I think there's optimism on defense, but nothing too crazy, just hoping they can keep their head above water and be a respectable unit week in and week out instead of a leaky faucet that was always felt to be more problematic given who your head coach is.
Yeah, Craig, you mentioned with Aranda and going through this before, with him calling the plays and then handing the reins over to somebody else and kind of that back and forth. Can you walk us through how long or how many seasons has Dave Aranda been calling the plays and been the guy overseeing the defense versus somebody else?
Well, I mean, he had Ron Roberts initially that came over, and now he's bounced around a couple of times ever since then. But Ron Roberts was the guy during 2021 in particular when they had that great run after the COVID sort of throwaway year. That's when they had Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard and just an incredible defense, best team in school history, Sugar Bowl winners, all that. And then after that, you know, Roberts and he eventually have a falling out of sorts. I think just start to see things a little bit differently. He brings in Matt Pallage. Matt Pallage, quite frankly, probably not quite ready for the gig. At some point, unofficially, Aranda kind of takes over and brings back his influence into the mix and then kind of backs away from that. Eventually, Pallage is still pretty much the DC in name. And then, you know, at some points, it just became a little bit fuzzy on as to how who really was calling the plays before here in this last year or two, you know, Aranda starts to once again take over the play calling, and Pallage leaves the staff this past December. So it was weird in that he was kind of the guy in name only there for the last couple of years, and Aranda had a pretty good amount of influence. So again, it was a thing where fans, I think, are fine with that because, hey, it's Dave Aranda. But then when that didn't even turn out to be some magic trick that unlocked everything and the defense was still just kind of ho-hum, if a little bit better, whatever, that's why you fail to see too much excitement around anything changing drastically, because if Aranda can't have this defense operating at a full level, who can? But Clanderman, now a fresh set of eyes, fresh name to the lineup. You're hoping he fully hands over those reins and will be hands off and Clanderman can have this. So yeah, it happened a couple times over. I mean, Ron Roberts to Aranda, Matthew Pallage, kind of Aranda. No, it's still Pallage. It's Aranda. That was kind of the deal. So it was a bit of an odd situation, but Aranda took it all on his shoulders, and I think people view him as basically being the defensive coordinator the last couple of years.
Craig, what do you think would be enough for Dave to keep his job? Do you think 7 wins would be enough?
I don't think so, man. I think that last year, I mean, again, we're talking about last year was year 6, and you're looking at that 2021 season, and that ought to buy you a good amount of time, right? Best team in school history, record number of draft picks, Sugar Bowl, only time you've ever won that game in your school's history. Like, he really gave himself some free reign, but then he quickly ate into that with a couple of follow-up years. So now you get to year 6, the end of last year, I think you're sitting there at 5-7. That was it. And then you have, again, an unexpected change out of nowhere at athletic director. And based on everything that I know, had Mack Rhodes not had to depart, I think that they make a change. And I think what's going to be really interesting is that if you see Eric Morris go on to have tons of success at Oklahoma State, there's going to be a number of Baylor fans that are bitter because they feel like that might have been the Baylor head coach had there not been this change at athletic director. Or if not him, perhaps it's G.J. Kinney. But I know Eric Morris was somebody that they were probably would have been very interested in talking to based on what I know, among others, a Kinney, maybe a Trailer, somebody along those lines. But I think they were prepared to do a full turnover. The AD situation happens. Next thing you know, you're going from thinking, hey, we're going to hire a football coach. Now we got to start an athletic director search. And then you talk about the money that comes into play there, and then all the money that you'd had to set aside for a coaching change. And now I think they made the smart decision and just deciding to get the right athletic director, catch their breath, let him get his whereabouts, and then kind of go from there. And that's what they've been doing these last few months. But I think you guys are well aware, anytime you change an athletic director, any coach he didn't hire is on like extra alert, right? And I think when you're a football coach who's been kind of middling for 3-4 seasons in a row and you're entering year 7, I think the bar's pretty high. So to answer your question, he's on borrowed time. And I think now with a new AD in place and just the feeling of the fan base, Ari, I think you got to win like 9 games, man, to ensure there's even like a real legit discussion at the end of the year, in my opinion. Like that's sort of where we are. You won 8 games a couple years ago. That didn't do much to change kind of the feeling around everything. Then you won 5 to follow that up. So simply making a bowl game, that's not good enough, in my opinion. That doesn't prove anything. Winning 8 games, you've been there, done that. I think to really wow your AD and to impress the fan base, I think you got to win like a minimum of like 9 or 10 games.
Wow.
That's sort of where we are. That sounds probably a bit of a stretch for this team based on what we know, but that's also where you are as far as year 7 and kind of having a 500 middle of the road resume at this point. So I think the bar is very high. I wouldn't say for sure, like, well, if he wins 9, then he's definitely back. I wouldn't say that because I don't know what that number is, but I think at minimum you're starting at like 9 games to make that even somewhat of a realistic conversation.
Craig, you said something there. You said how the fans feel. How do the fans feel with this current situation? Because I know like some of the home crowds towards the tail end of last year weren't great. So like what is the sense of the fan base?
I think they're just ready for a change. You know, I think it's just at this point, hey, Dave, thanks for 2021. Thanks for some of the memories along the way. You won't hear anybody say anything about him as being like a bad guy or unlikable. There's definitely people who don't like his style. They don't like his references. You know, sometimes they think he's a bit of an eccentric or kind of a nerdy football coach or whatever. They want more of like a boisterous, kind of just a different change. You know, they want somebody a little bit different because they've had their fill of Aranda up to this point. And so I think you can find easily some segments of the fan base that back in like 22 wanted to make a change, like a year removed from the greatest year ever. 23, you started to hear a lot more noise of like, okay, now we're a couple years removed from it. Then there was 24 and then there was 25. And so you've had people that for like 4 years now just want to see something different. And that's only grown in numbers the last couple of years as they've sort of just had middling to limited success. So I think it's just a matter of this guy's been around a long time. The era's changed. A lot's changed. Shoot, there are people who are in college that are like 4 years removed now, and Aranda's still the head coach, and nothing's really changed. And it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just been a thing where he's been around a while. And so at this point, people feel like they've seen the experiment and that it's ran its course and that it's time for something new and somebody new to come in and just jazz this place up. Bring some different flavor, some different style, a different way of doing things, and just freshen it up. And I think we can all relate to that to some degree. So it's understandable, but it's definitely the loudest it's ever been at this point.
Yeah, well said. Craig Smoke, 365 Sports. Smoke, thanks for your time, buddy. Appreciate you. Be well.
Hey, as always, man, appreciate you guys, and happy to join you whenever. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Craig.
it. Craig Smoke doing a great job. Covering Baylor as well as all college sports and Big 12 with 365 Sports. Great insight there from Craig. And I think, look, I mean, you know, he's right. You know, they went 8-4 a couple of years ago, and that really did nothing to, you know, quiet the fan base because they followed that up with a 5-7 season. So 8 wins might look as hollow in 2026 as it did in 2024.
Exactly. And the way they finished 2024, remember they started 2-4 that year. Won their last 6 to get to 8-4. They go into the bowl, they lose it. But that was supposed to be the setup year to last year.
Yeah.
They go 3-6 in Big 12 play. I could see why the fans have lost their patience. And 9 or 10 wins, it's going to be very difficult when you look at their schedule and just all the unknowns.
All right, we will take a look at Kansas State football on the road to Arlington tomorrow. But that will conclude our Road to Arlington Baylor series. If you missed it, you can catch it later on today at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We replay the full hour of the Road to Arlington Baylor. Plus, as a part of our Big 12 Today Power Hour today, you get our spring preview of Baylor. So we'll do the spring preview of Baylor and the Road to Arlington Baylor, all as a part of our extra programming here as a part of Big 12 Radio. If you've not yet already, make sure to download the TuneIn app, search Big 12, favorite the channel. That way it shows up each and every time you open up the app. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. A little valid or void is next. It's Big 12 Today.
Second.
is Nails from 45 yards. He's hit from 24 and 45.
Farron from Kaysville, Utah. He hits this one well. Does it have the distance? Yes, it does. Banged it through the uprights into the net. Points on the board for BYU heading into the locker room.
New PB. New personal best. You blitz.
Will Farron 1 for 2. He missed from 36, made from 50, and now he has made from 41. As it's now 41-13. 7:09 to play at Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Former Boise State Bronco, career long is 50.
Watch how fast this gets up.
Farron from 49, easily good.
Watch the low ball when they try and drive it out a little bit longer. Opportunity for a block.
Farron's kick has the distance, and it is good. He drilled it.
Man, that thing might
just
have
the second he's hit in his career from 50 plus.
Nice snap, nice hold. Didn't even kick up any of the rubber from the field there. Caught it cleanly. Picked it off of the turf, like you with your sweet 9-iron.
Already one fake field goal turned into a 4th down conversion today. Will Farron from 41 yards knocks it through. And it's 10-0 BYU. Just 7 seconds.
And Farron drills it.
Wow. He absolutely smoked that football at the gun to make it 20-0 BYU. A near perfect half for the Cougars.
And Farron is Nails from 45 yards. He's hit from 24 and 40.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios with James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo. It's time for a little Valid or Void. This is where we bring in our producer, Taman Turner, who comes up with topics, and we decide if these topics are valid or void. T-Chains?
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ari. Okay, so first topic for valid or void, Texas Tech back in the Women's College World Series. So my first topic is Nigel Kennedy will win the College World Series Most Outstanding Player. Valid or void?
I'm going valid. Now, part of this has to do with the fact that last week I think I voided every single one of your topics. So today,
just coming out hot.
We validate. Nyjah has the one thing she didn't have last year on this stage, and that is help. She has help in the rotation. This is also her last shot at the one thing, the only thing that's really missing from her resume. She's had perfect games. She's the only active pitcher with 1,000 strikeouts, 96 career wins, that career ERA of less than 1. Like, everything is there for her to be the star in this moment on this stage because, number one, she's experienced, she's got the familiarity, and she has help. So, yeah, I'll validate this, T-Chains.
I will also validate, and I wanted to look at reasons to void this. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, it feels like Nyjah's done everything she can possibly do at this level with the exception of go out there and win a national championship. And if Texas Tech goes and wins a national championship in softball, you better believe that Nigel Kennedy will be the player of the tournament. So I will validate this and say Texas Tech will want to win the whole thing, and Kennedy will be the big reason for it.
Look at you guys validating together. It's a validating Tuesday. Okay, topic numero dos. Kansas's, or should I say Kansas? Ari's Kansas Jayhawks. Man, they are playing out.
Kansas is Ari Jayhawks.
Yeah, Kansas is Ari. Exactly. So, topic number 2: Kansas will make the College World Series. Valid or void?
Ari?
I'm going to void this. Why? Well, because, first of all, man, Arkansas has just been the bane of Kansas's existence within recent history. It feels like any time Kansas has the opportunity to be eliminated in postseason play, it's Arkansas right there to wave us. Hi, bye. It's just really weird. Like, I'm thinking about basketball within recent history. I'm thinking about baseball in recent history. I'm thinking about, I don't know, all sports. It's like anytime there's postseason play for Kansas, it's like, well, there's Arkansas, so you can get past them. Look, I think Missouri State played Arkansas twice during the regular season, beat them once. That's a really high-level 3 seed in their region. Like, Kansas had no favors done. And then on top of that, let's just say Kansas makes it through their region. Then they have to play the number 2 overall seed in Georgia Tech, who's arguably the best team in college softball, or college baseball, excuse me. So you got to go to Atlanta, take on Georgia Tech in the Supers, and win 2 out of 3 there in order to get through. So tough road for Kansas. This is the first region that Kansas has ever hosted in NCAA tournament play. So it's been a remarkable season, and hopefully it continues. But, man, it's going to be tough to think they can get through.
Yeah, I mean, they just had their best season in program history. But I think to make that final step, to your point, I'm going to void this as well because of the path. Arkansas might be the most dangerous 2 seed in the entire thing. 39-20, brutal schedule. They've been there many, many times before. And then Georgia Tech would potentially be standing in KU's way in their own backyard. And Georgia Tech is 30-4 this year at home. They took 2 out of 3 against a top 10 Clemson team. They swept number 14 NC State. They split with number 11 Auburn. They swept number 5 Florida State 3 straight games, and that was just a few weeks ago. They did lose the series late in the year, 2-1 to number 3 North Carolina, but bounced back by taking down their rival in Georgia. So their schedule is littered with top 5 at the time opponents, and they have fared very well. So I think it's a really difficult road for KU because of the bracket.
We went from a valid Tuesday to a void a Tuesday. Okay, topic number 3. There was another team in the Big 12 that's hosting a regional. That team is West Virginia. So valid or void, West Virginia will make the College World Series.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to void this one as well. I love what that West Virginia team is all about, and I like their chances in Morgantown. But then, looming on the other side is UCLA, the number 1 team in the country, number 1 RPI. So I think KU and Ari led the show with this. KU and West Virginia, the tournament selection committee did not do them any favors, giving them the 15 and the 16 seeds. I think that's a disservice for both those programs to have to play a UCLA or a Georgia Tech in Supers. So I'm going to avoid this one as well.
Yeah, I actually think West Virginia's got an easier path than Kansas does to getting to the Super Regional. It's just once you're there, you get UCLA. And, again, you just mentioned it all, the stats. Not to mention Rock Chalowski is the #1 player in college baseball and the presumptive #1 overall pick of my Chicago White Sox coming up here in a few weeks. So that's just an extremely tough draw, given that I think they make it out of regionals but will fall in Super Regional. So I'm going to avoid this one as well, following in line with you. Big 12 did not get any help here in terms of the top 2 teams at the top of the conference have #1 and #2 in their Super Regionals should they survive that long. So I agree with you here. I will avoid this one.
You guys are agreeing on everything. Wow. All right. Topic number 4. So Arizona State, they're in the regionals as well, but they're going on the road. So my question is, or should I say valid or void, Arizona State should have been ranked a 2 seed in the regionals. They are a 3 seed.
Yeah, and I see why this is here because Oklahoma State and UCF, they all got better seeds, and Oklahoma State has a nearly identical record. But Arizona State, even with their 19-11 Big 12 record, their RPI is in the mid-40s. And I don't have their quad 1 win and loss record in front of me, but I look at some of the other teams and where they were seeded, and being 44th in RPI means you're appropriately seated on that 3 line. So unfortunately, Taman, I said it was going to be a bounce-back validate Tuesday for you, but so far it's 3 in a row. I'm going to have to avoid this one as well.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm going to avoid as well. The RPI is the RPI, and Arizona State was sitting number 43 in the RPI heading into the final week of the season. The committee has historically required top 20 RPI to get a host or a top seed position. They dropped further to 53 after the loss at Houston. So at that point, they were barely safe as an at-large bid. So I would say for the 1-3 seed, the lowest seeded team, Arizona State makes sense there. And look, they are a dangerous bunch, as they were in softball, because they've got Jerry Bonds. What are they calling him?
Harry Bonds.
Harry Bonds. Thank you. Jerry Hairston. Harry Bonds.
Harry Bonds. Love it. Okay, leading to that next topic, same idea here. So UCF is a 2 seed. So UCF is the best 2 seed in the Big 12. Valid or void? Just a reminder, Oklahoma State and Cincinnati are the other 2 seeds.
Yeah, and they're all almost pretty much dead even on record. I would say Oklahoma State is the best 2 seed. Or Cincinnati. UCF would be the 3rd, in my opinion, among the 2 seeds. So if the question is UCF is the best 2 seed,
yes.
Going to have to void it as well, T-Chains. Cincinnati has the most top 100 RPI wins in the country. Oklahoma State enters the tournament. They're going to be second. They're second in the country in home runs with 137. So they have the power to maybe get through. They've won 13 of their last 17 games entering the postseason. Now, they've got a tough draw with Alabama, but in terms of if we're just side-by-siding these 3 Big 12 teams, you look at the standings, you look at what they've done down the stretch, I think it's Oklahoma State or Cincinnati, and Cincinnati would have the resume bragging rights over UCF.
James is so non-confrontational that he's apologizing for a segment that requires him to be confrontational.
I apologize, Taman.
Dude is so afraid of being confrontational, he's apologizing in a segment that requires confrontation.
What a nice guy he is.
I'm going to force James to be a little bit confrontational from my cold, dead hands. I'm going to avoid this one too. Cincinnati, to me, is the top 2 seed. And look, I think Cincinnati's got as good a shot of anybody in the Big 12 to get to Supers. So, yeah, I'm going to avoid this as well. I think UCF has the toughest draw of any Big 12 team. They're in Auburn's regional as a 2 seed facing the number 4 overall seed of the country. And then on top of that, I actually think Auburn's regional is the toughest out there. For a 4 seed, they got hosed. So, yeah, I think Cincinnati's probably the best 2 seed out there and has the best regional.
All right, guys, final one. You guys did your Road to Arlington series today featuring Baylor. So it had me thinking about Dave Aranda. You guys kind of spoke to it, and you talked about it with Craig Smoke. So valid or void, Dave Aranda will coach Baylor beyond the year 2026.
You want to just go ahead and validate this, James, so you don't have to apologize to Taman?
I see the look of rejection
on
Taman's face every time we say void.
I'm going to void this. Could Baylor have an 8-9 win season? Yeah, certainly. I see a path there. I just think it's too many questions coalescing into one off season. And it's not just, you've breaking in a new quarterback who's had some major struggles turning the football over. And you've also, it's not any one of these things individually might mean more optimism, but it's all of them together, for me, is the reason I'm pessimistic about this season for Baylor. I think 7 wins is reasonable. I think 6 wins is probably most likely. Aranda is 36-37. He's 24-30 in the Big 12 overall across 6 seasons, and he's had losing records in 3 of the last 4 years. I don't see that's a trend that moves up. I think they would have fired him had the administration not had the upheaval that it had, and so this is a dead man walking. Dave Aranda.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think if last year had gone a
dead
little
man
bit
walking.
better, like even 7 or 8 wins, maybe you can say, okay, the bar's not as high for this year. But, I mean, we just heard Craig, and I think he's right. 9 wins still maybe doesn't do it. You've got to win 9 at least, and maybe 10 for him to be back because of the buyout situation, because of the new AD who's – anytime you hear the words reassessing the football program, that doesn't sound good. It sounds like the bar is going to be very high for Dave Aranda in this season. And just so many things have to go right in unison for them to have a breakthrough year. And this could be Dave Aranda's best team, and they don't get to 10 wins because of just how difficult the schedule is, even in comparison to his second year there when they won 12 games and went to the Sugar Bowl. So I'm going to avoid it as well.
Let me ask this one bonus question involving Dave Aranda. Do you think he lasts the season? Could he be a Mike Gundy? Could he get what would it take for him to get
No, because I think their schedule has enough wins on there that it wouldn't have gone completely awry in the same way that it went for Gundy. I think he will last the season.
What was James Franklin's record when he got let go? Weren't they like 1-3 or 1-4? I mean, I see worst case scenario they start 2-2. You've got built-in wins against Prairie View A&M and Louisiana Tech. Although Louisiana Tech is usually a bowl team. If they lose that game,
all bets
start 1-3.
I agree with you.
He's not making it to to week 5.
Yeah. If they start 1-3, I could see that. But I just don't. Most programs don't want to fire coaches early, and I think given that Baylor's expectations are not the college football playoff, like. Franklin was fired early because the expectations were the playoff. Gundy was fired early because they hadn't won a Big 12 game in 2 years. And, they had no path towards doing that. So I just don't see it going completely off the rails. Again, I think 6 wins will be easily attainable for Baylor, but I don't think 6 wins will be enough for Dave Aranda to keep his job.
Yeah, and I think, Baylor and just the way they handle their business, Dave Aranda is very likable. The fans want him to succeed. Unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case. So I think from a loyalty, we're going to let you play this thing out, save face. I'd be shocked if he gets fired at any point during the year.
On the way next, Brandon Scott, the assistant coach and pitching coach for the University of Kansas baseball team. We'll talk with him about what this program and team is doing. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. 16. Joining us now to talk through Kansas baseball is the assistant coach, pitching coach for KU baseball, Brandon Scott, joining us here after Kansas wins both the Big 12 regular season and tournament championship. And first off, Brandon, rock chalk, what an incredible run here, an incredible season for a program that hasn't really done either of those things very much in the Big 12 era.
Rock chalk, you're exactly right. It's been an exciting run, and what a time to be a Jayhawk and part of the Jayhawk community.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as a Jayhawk myself, like how you've just seen the excitement grow for this baseball program since you've been there, especially from the ballpark. I mean, hosting a regional in Lawrence is a huge deal, and the student section has just been absolutely lit really the last couple of years.
It's interesting. Our first year here, we show up to the basketball games, and Coach Fitzgerald made the comment. He goes, if we could just get some of these folks to come to a baseball game. And here we are now 4 years later, and as I'm looking out my window, they're literally expanding the stadium. They're putting up tents in the outfield. I mean, it's just incredible to think about where we've come, but what's going to happen here this weekend. It really is. It's cool for us, and I know it's, like you said, as an alum, but for everyone here in town, it's an exciting time, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've been a huge part of this turnaround, and to see it all kind of come together, not just with the regular season title, but with the tournament title. When that final out happened, like what's going through your mind?
In a game like we had on Saturday, where it's 9-0 going into the ninth, you get some time to reflect. And I started thinking about it, and I hate to say this as a coach because we talk about being in the moment, but when we had the 6-run inning and we went up there in the seventh, I leaned over to our other assistant and I said, "Man, let's just enjoy this. This is cool." You start to think about the work you've put in. The guys that played here our first year who didn't get to experience this. You think about what went into recruiting Bodie Reyes. He's out closing the game out, and he's about to celebrate and win a championship. And you think about the shortstop Tyson LeBlanc. The home visits you had to get him. I just let my brain go there for a minute. I did. I was guilty of it. And just how happy I am. Our staff we're all friends. We've all worked together at previous places. We know each other very well. And, I've worked for Coach Fitzgerald. Now this is my second time. And I've been his assistant every year he's been a head coach. And just to know, I'm just so proud of him and knowing how hard he's worked to get to here and obviously giving us all this opportunity. But I let my brain get away from me there in the ninth inning, and because you didn't really have to worry about, I didn't worry about losing, and that's crazy to say. I knew we had the game won, but that's, you don't always get those chances, but I did. I reflected there for about an inning about how awesome the experience has been here at Kansas.
That's awesome. And look, I mean, when you're the pitching coach and you've recruited many of these pitchers, you can be pretty confident your team to hold a 9-run lead there, right? So, I mean, you could dream a bit there, especially when you're overseeing that pitching staff.
Well, we've given up a couple 6-run leads the last couple of weeks, so 9 I was hoping was enough.
Yeah. Well said. Talk to us about some of these guys that you've recruited and developed. Don Vagley's the name, obviously, that stands out. And maybe some anecdotes or stories about their time or things you've noticed about them, or just give us some insight here into guys you've recruited and how they've developed now, especially Don Vagley.
I think the common trends you're going to find on our team, whether it's a pitcher or position players, we just try to recruit good people. And I know Coach Fitzgerald, we have one rule: be a good teammate, and that's truly, that encompasses 1,000 things. But to us, being a good teammate is you care about the program more than you do yourself. You show up every day wanting to get better. You really don't care about the personal wins and losses. And as pitchers, that's really important to me. It's doing what you're asked to do when you're asked to do it. And guys like Don Vagley, I'll start with him. He's one of our first recruits here, and I was fortunate to know about Dom, my previous job, and had some guys call me, some scouts and some other coaches, and a kid from a small town outside of St. Louis who honestly didn't know much about the Jayhawks. He was I think if you pinned him down and you really asked him, he was probably more of a Missouri fan, which I hate to say that, but we were able to get him and just to watch his development, how fast it happened. but it happened because of the things I just mentioned. You know, he's a hard worker. He's as steady, what I call steady Eddie as it gets. Like, you know, if he's given up 4 runs in an inning or if he's got 15 punch outs, he's the same guy. You know, and that's kind of how we've built our team. And, you know, those stories, you know, I hope that in 10 years we're talking about the wins that Dominic Vegley had for this program and how big the moments were and how he handled it. But he's just, you know, he's going to throw Friday against Northeastern. I promise you right now, he doesn't know the difference in Northeastern and LSU, you know, or Arkansas or Tennessee. He's just going to show up, and he'll show up today and do his work to get ready to beat whatever hitters they put in front of him on Friday night. And that's all we can appreciate out of this group is it's just a very, very, very blue-collar attitude. And it shows up in the games. It shows up, you know, the way they enjoy the crowd, the way they feed off the crowds. This has just been a fun team to coach. And I think it's because we have 34 guys who are really good teammates. And I know that's a very generic answer, but that's really who we are. And, you know, whether it's Dominic Vegley or Bodie Ray, who's become our closer, you know, who started in junior college and just puts his personal career on the backside and says, hey, Coach, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And you look up and he's got 9 saves and 7 wins. And you can't put a price on how important that is for building character amongst a team. And that's just on my side with the pitchers, but Dan and Tyler on the hitting side, it's the same way. And I think that's just who we are as a really blue-collar baseball team.
Yeah, and being a blue-collar team, what does that say about the type of kid that you recruit and how you guys attack the JUCO ranks?
Well, they kind of go hand in hand, right? So, you know, it seems like nowadays junior college guys, they go there for a reason. One, they feel like they got slighted an opportunity somewhere else. They didn't get the money that they wanted. 2, they think they can go there and be a draft. Or three, there's some guys that academically have to. We don't have many of those. But those guys they've all got a chip on their shoulder. They're trying to prove that, hey, I'm better than, I hate to say it like this, but I'm better than junior college, and I'm going to get somewhere like Kansas and prove it. And the guys that we've been able to land here, you know, they're not the high dollar guys. You know, we're not. We know where we're at here at Kansas, and we know where we're at in the Big 12. There's a pecking order in recruiting, so we have to find the right fit. But it seems to be the last couple of years that the guys we're bringing in are truly workers, and they all want to play pro ball. You know, there's no doubt about it, and they know they've been to a junior college, it didn't work out, so they know they get here and they feel like we can develop them and make that next step. And we've been fortunate to do it with enough guys that, you know, it's kind of that old, the proof's in the pudding, right? So, you know, that they see that what we're doing, and I think that's helping us, you know, with this class and this next class for the next couple of years. Guys know now that, hey, I can go there and reach the goals that I've always wanted to reach. And, you know, so we'll continue to dig in that market, junior college and transfer portal. That's kind of our DNA. And yeah, it's been very good to us so far.
All right, so give us a sense here of what this week will be like in preparation for hosting a regional, and, you know, give us a sense of the difficulty of this region. You know, obviously Arkansas is a team that, you know, many expected to potentially be hosting, and now they find themselves as a 2 seed. Again, just give us a sense here of what this week looks like and how it all plays out.
So normal week for us, we hope, until Friday, right? So we are full practice yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You know, I think we haven't allowed ourselves to really expand too much on who we're playing or who's here with the guys. Now, as coaches, you know, there's no sleep this week. It's 3 full scouting reports. You know, we'll start with Northeastern, and we'll present that to the guys probably Thursday evening. But behind closed doors, you know, Coach Fitzgerald, Coach Hancock, myself, Coach Coyne, we're already on to Arkansas and obviously Missouri State as well. But with the guys, it'll be really, really high focus about Northeastern, and that'll be where our attention's at until we play that game. You know, I think that it's human nature now with Twitter and every other thing that you know, the guys know how hard the grouping is. You know, we're not dumb to it. Arkansas is a fantastic team. I think Missouri State, if you really look at it on paper, could have been a 2. You know, let's be honest, and Northeastern could could win this regional with no problem. You know, they're a very skilled team. I don't think the guys think as much about some of that stuff as probably what we think they do. You know, but it is a concern as a staff. You know, we just want them to be focused on Northeastern and let us handle the rest. And I think they'll do a great job. You know, last weekend was a great chance for us to kind of go through what we thought was a regional setting. We played a good Baylor team, you know, on to Baylor, and then we're straight into Oklahoma State. You know, you've got 6 hours to prepare. You beat Oklahoma State. We had played West Virginia, you know, a couple weeks previous, so we had a good report on them. But literally, you could just sense that the guys didn't turn the page until after that previous game was over, and that was a great opportunity for us to I think live out by example what this week should look like. You know, the fans are going to be here. It's going to be loud. We're used to that. The support we've been getting for the last 2 years has prepared us for this, and there'll be more Arkansas fans here, I'm sure, than what we're used to. But that's going to be great. I think we kind of feed into some of that. So really looking forward to what this weekend presents.
Yeah, as you look into Arkansas, Coach, like what's the number one thing that fans should know or be aware of when it comes to the Razorbacks?
Well, I think you said it. You know, they're a team that could have easily hosted, probably should have hosted. What stands out to me, obviously, is they have great pitching, and they have a great pitching coach. They have talent throughout their roster. You know, they've got a couple guys in the lineup, you know, in Helfrich and Kosel that they really make them go. But I think when I look at Arkansas, I think about their pitching. You know, and I don't know what they'll line up, whether we'll see Dietz or Geico or how they'll line up against us if we were to see them in game 2. But they have as much arm talent as anybody we've played, obviously, and that's what stands out to me. I think that, you know, I'll argue that Dave Van Horn's one of the top 10 coaches that's ever coached in this sport, and he'll have them ready to go. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, well said. You know, because pitching is your focus, you know, are there teams, do you think, that our hitters, Kansas's hitters, maybe match up with well against in terms of just who their pitchers are in this tournament? Like, how do you kind of look at that, and is that more of the scouting that's done in terms of, hey, we'd like to see this guy and see these hitters because they, you know, favor these kinds of pitchers? Give us a sense here of how that scouting goes.
You know, if you look across our team stats offensively, and we look at this every week, we're pretty neutral right now, right, left. So, you know, sometimes that plays a factor. You look at a team and go, man, they've got a really good left-handed pitcher, and we struggle against lefties, or they've got a slider righty, and that's our weakness. We're fairly neutral in the left-right splits right now. So I don't think that – I can't say that there's, you know, there's one arm out there that you're like, man, I hope we can dodge him. You know, like I just see, you know, Northeastern's got 2 guys, and they haven't announced who they're going with yet. The kind of guy that we'd like to see is we're going to make him throw it in the strike zone, right? So give us a guy, if you had to say, hey, Brandon, what's the ideal guy you want to see from Northeastern? I hope he sprays it all over the park and walks us, you know, 7 times, because those kind of guys, we can grind them out. You know, we're a tough offense, and if you're not a premier strike throwing team, that's when we're at our best. You know, we can make some at bats very long, and we get into the bullpen, and as you know, when you get in the bullpen against anyone, you know, you can take advantage of that. So we're looking at that. You know, who are they premier strike throwers? What's their out pitch? And you know, Northeastern has a couple guys that they could choose from that look like they are strike throwers, but not going to be as, I guess I would say, arm talent that we've seen the last couple weeks. You know, so I don't think that we'll sell anyone short. I know we will not do that, but you know, I think that Arkansas can present a couple guys that, you know, are first-day draft talent, which is a little bit different skill set maybe than what we'll see out of Northeastern, just from looking at the early scouting reports.
Yeah, well said. Great stuff, and we appreciate your time. This has been a lot of fun. Brandon Scott, the assistant coach and pitching coach for KU baseball, winning the Big 12 regular season and the tournament championship, now a 15 seed, hosting a regional with Northeastern, Missouri State, and Arkansas, and then on to Atlanta potentially in a super regional against Georgia Tech. Rock Chalk, Coach Scott, you continue to make us proud as KU alum, and keep doing it, because it's a lot of fun to watch your team. It's been a lot of fun to watch you guys grind this thing, and we can't wait to see what you do in the postseason.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. And Rock Chalk.
Brandon Scott, Kansas baseball coach, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Great stuff. We'll break down what we just heard from him, talk a little bit about regionals in the final whistle next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Jackson's in trouble down. David Bailey, he is a sack machine.
This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Just visited with Brandon Scott, assistant coach and pitching coach for KU Baseball, ahead of their regional. Kansas got hosed a little bit in its region as the 15 seed. I think it says a lot about where the committee views the Big 12 in baseball. And, it's clear the SEC is the front of the class. But, yeah, I mean, TCU was a quote-unquote bubble team to not get in. The Big 12, which some projected to have as high as a 13 seed, ends up being a 15 seed, James.
Yeah, and I really liked what I heard from Brandon Scott. He made the reference several times that Kansas is just a blue-collared program and team. And that's a natural fit when you've put together the number one JUCO recruiting class in the country 3 straight years. They did it in 22, they did it in 23, they did it in 24, and they're up there again this season. And those guys play with a chip on their shoulder. And what he's done in his small sample size of a KU career, like in his first 2 seasons, overseeing the pitching, they lowered their team ERA by over 3 runs per game. So it was like an immediate impact that Brandon Scott had on that program. And the power and the hot bats and all the high-scoring affairs, if you will, get the headlines, but they don't beat West Virginia if not for that pitching performance. They shut out one of the hottest teams in the league in the Big 12 tournament championship game. So he deserves a ton of credit. Interesting that he said he's been with Coach Fitzgerald. This is their second time together. When was the first, do you know? Probably Des Moines Community College would be my guess.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. I did look it up at one point, and that stands out to me.
It makes sense with all the JUCO success that they have. And then this guy's churned out 29 MLB draft selections. Kansas is an incredible story. And did they get hosed because, and it's weird saying this because we think of their basketball pedigree, because they're Kansas when it comes to baseball? You said one bracketologist had them as high as a 13 seed, and they land at 15?
Well, I think, look, losing 3 straight to West Virginia at the end of the year didn't do Kansas any favors. Even though they won the Big 12, I think the committee looked at those 3 losses at the end of the year as pretty damning. And I don't think that offset the winning the Big 12 championship against them. I'd be curious to see if West Virginia had won the Big 12 championship in the tournament, would that have moved West Virginia to higher than 15? But look, I think it just speaks to where the committee views the Big 12 right now. And I think we wondered all year, is it the 3rd best conference? Is it the 2nd best conference? And I think right now the committee views the SEC and the ACC as the 1 and 2. And so we'll see how this thing shakes out. I mean, for Kansas to prove that they're the best, they've got to beat the best. They got to beat Arkansas, part of the SEC. You got to go and beat the best of the ACC. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and the highest ranked Big 12 team in the RPI is West Virginia at number 17. Kansas is number 19. Cincinnati is 22. Oklahoma State is 29. UCF is 36. So in the top 10, there's 3 Big 10 schools. USC, UCLA is number 1, and then Nebraska cracks the top 10. And then it's basically a split between the SEC and the ACC. So like we talk about in football, these postseason games against a team like Arkansas, that's really exciting to have KU and Arkansas. Number 1, just in terms of proximity, it's an easy drive for Arkansas fans. They'll get their hands on as many tickets as they can. Kansas has been selling out every series. It is going to be an epic, feel like a College World Series type environment in Lawrence, and that's a huge stage for the Big 12. And it feels like Kansas would potentially be an underdog. In fact, they're only 2 spots apart when it comes to the RPI. KU's 19 and Arkansas's 21. I think people that just look at that matchup think, okay, there's Arkansas. Arkansas gets through.
Yeah, no, well said. All right, tomorrow we're going to be at the Omni at the PGA in Frisco for the Big 12 spring meetings. We've got the SEC spring meetings going on this week in Destin, Florida, and already Greg Sankey's making headlines with his comments. Before we get to those comments, James, let's preview the Big 12 spring meetings. What do you think will be most important? What will be questions we're going to be looked to have answered? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is the college football playoff format. What does that look like?
It looks like the Big 12 supports 24-team model.
Right. What are those discussions? Are there any outliers in that room? Is there any reconsideration? Is there anything else that the Big 12 considers pushing for? And I'm looking forward to hearing what the coaches have to say. We know how the commissioner feels about it. We think it'd be really good for the league if we can get X amount of automatic bids, but just to be in that room and just to hear how the coaches feel about it, I think is really cool.
What I think is most important, far more important than the actual expansion of the playoff, is what Greg Sankey said and what's been happening with the CSC. Of course, to quickly recap, the CSC was established as part of the House settlement, and basically any money that went to players above the cap had to be put through a clearinghouse to justify whether or not it's a legitimate NIL deal. This all as a idea sounded ridiculous to me at start, and that's where we are, because what we've had happen is some of these MMRs, the multimedia rights holders for these schools, basically pledged the amount of money needed to go over the cap to sign certain players. And now what we're seeing is the CSC is rejecting some of those deals. And so the majority of them being Big Ten or SEC schools are having these deals rejected. Ergo, you have Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti basically saying, we need new national standards, and if we don't get those, we're going to move out to be on our own. To me, that's the biggest piece here, because there is no expanded playoff unless there's some idea of what the future looks like for the CSC and for the Big Ten and the SEC. Like, plainly put, there is no future of a playoff or expansion or anything if the SEC says we're going to go in-house and bring in our own rules. What does a playoff look like then? And is it just the SEC and the Big Ten? So I think, this whole CSC thing, does the clearinghouse survive? Does the SEC and the Big Ten take, their rules in-house? These are all things that I don't think are happening over the course of the next year, but they're very much on the horizon over the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, and like that, the CSC system that was supposed to fix college sports is essentially falling apart in real time. And the Big 12 is kind of caught in the crossfire between the Big 10 and the SEC. And Commissioner Yormark has done a tremendous job of, we were at these meetings last year, and the focus was the Big 12 and the Big 12 only. Doesn't matter what the Big 10 or the SEC are doing. It'll just be interesting to see if that dynamic has shifted when you've got the SEC and the Big 10 pushing back on so many really high-profile issues. What is the Big 12 stance? How does the Big 12 attack this in a unified manner?
This is something we weren't really able to talk with Yormark about, but when you've got Sankey saying, quote, we still believe we need national standards. If those can't be achieved, then we'll have to look at a more conference-led regulation. But that's the reality we're facing. This is sort of the first time we've had pointed comments directly towards, the SEC and the Big Ten basically saying we could create our own system that we could police way better than what we've built ourselves. Mm-hmm. Remember, Jamie Pollard called this out. And by the way, those comments have made their way into the boardrooms of the Big Ten and the SEC meetings. And so, they're front and center, but Pollard said it, and he's right. They spent $50 million to create and now support this CSC. They're just throwing it away now because the results don't match the wants of each of the Big Ten and SEC schools. Oh, and by the way, Iowa State may have a partnership with Learfield, but is Learfield investing this kind of money above the cap at Iowa State than they would for another one of their partners?
Mm-hmm. It's another interesting dynamic.
That's something right now that is happening across college sports. It's the Big Ten and the SEC that are leaning on their multimedia rights partners, Learfield, the Playflies, to basically support the money going above the cap. But that's probably not the case for every one of Learfield's clients. It's probably not the case for every one of Playfly's clients.
Mm-hmm. And the stuff from the Big Ten and the SEC with breaking away, it feels like this is one step closer to them actually doing it. Initially it was just a rumor.
100%.
Oh, they could do this.
100%.
And now it
was more in the abstract.
Exactly. This is the first time that we've heard the guys at the top that make those decisions, almost threatening in a way that, hey, we could break away. We have the power to break away. And so I think it's time for the Big 12 to kind of address, okay, if that does happen, what's our next move? Like, it's a game of chess, right? And so I think a lot of this is going to be the Big 12 athletic directors and the powers that be getting together to decide what that would look like in terms of the next step if this happens, next step if this happens.
Well, that's where it feels like it's going more towards a, European Soccer Champions League type situation, in which I would imagine the Big 12 has already had at least some private internal discussions about this, and I'm imagining the answer being, well, we've got to do our own then Big 12
right
self-governance. Okay, so then what does the playoff look like, right? Because it all boils down to the money and TV deal tied to the playoff. So is it, what does the access to a playoff look like then if there's, self-governing bodies across all of college sports? That's where I think this playoff stuff really takes a very interesting turn.
Exactly. It's all tied together. Yeah. And how many other ADs feel the same way about Jamie Pollard? Right? That's another thing we'll find out. So there's a lot. I mean, I felt like last year's spring meetings were big. This year, next level.
Yeah, because even though it'll appear on the surface like the biggest discussions are about the playoff and playoff expansion, it's much deeper than that. The CSC stuff is much, much deeper than that. So we will, of course, bring you the latest from the spring meetings tomorrow and Thursday, from the Big 12 spring meetings at the Omni PGA in Frisco. Of course, we're also going to continue our Road to Arlington series with Kansas State, so stay tuned for that. If you missed Baylor's today, it's all part of Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. Thanks, of course, as always, to Anthony Smith, our producer at Big 12 Studios. Thanks to Taman T-Chains Turner for producing on TuneIn. Thanks to James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. Big 12 Today is back from spring meetings in Frisco tomorrow. But for now, we're out. Peace.